City Council is in session. Invocation, Councilman Maniscalco, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's my pleasure this morning to welcome retired Air Force Colonel Tim Keyports, who grew up in Tampa and graduated from Jefferson High School. He is currently the president of the Old Seminole Heights Neighborhood Association and vice president of the Heights Urban Core Chamber, and now works at Concierge Financial Organization in Seminole Heights. If we could all please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge. Colonel Keyports, take it away.
Good morning. It is an honor to address Tampa City Council and the citizens present this morning. Let us take a few moments to pause, to reflect, and to invite peace and calm to enter this chamber, our minds, and most importantly, our hearts. Lord, we ask that you extend your Holy Spirit into this room and envelop all of us with your unfathomable wisdom. As each of us walk through the challenges of today, and as we individually and as a council strive to make the best decisions for our community, our city, and our families, lead us to be strong, to be wise, and to always be humble. Help us also to reflect positively on the amazing men and women serving currently or serving previously in our military as we think and reflect ahead of Veterans Day this coming Monday. It is through their efforts that we are able to live peacefully in this great nation. In Jesus' name we pray and lift your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Dean Coward. Goods. Here. Maniscalco.
Here.
Tikro.
Here.
Miranda.
Here.
Carlson.
Here.
And Vieira.
Here. Okay, let's move to approval of the agenda and the addendum to the
So moved.
agenda. I think beforehand, Councilman Carlson, you said you wanted something, sir?
Yeah, there are a few things. Number one, and apologies to staff and anybody, but overnight I got a bunch of calls and emails about number 20, which is related to drones. And if possible, it would be great to just pull that for discussion. I don't know if staff's available or not, but
We can pull it. I don't know if staff, I guess that would be with the
Yeah.
Tampa Police Department. I highly doubt we can get somebody here, but if you want to pull it for purpose of discussion, we can do that.
yeah, I apologize to everybody. That just came overnight. Number 56, I previously said I would like to pull that just so we can separately discuss that instead of being on the consent agenda.
56. 56.
And then 103, I propose moving that one to March 5th. The reason that I said in my memo was that originally we wanted the head of economic development to report. Since then, the head of economic development left, and so the idea is to wait until the head of economic development is on board and has time to analyze the situation and has a look at that in the context of a larger plan.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion for that, sir?
Yes, I'd like to move that be moved to March 5th.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Carlson, a second by Councilman Citro. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Anything else?
That's it, thanks.
Okay. And yes, sir.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can, with regard to your ceremonial activities in terms of housekeeping, did you want to address that during the approval of the
Yes, sir.
agenda?
Thank you for that. I know that our friends from Donatello are requesting to go first, and I have no problem with that. We'll have that. And then additionally, we have the wonderful Karen Clay here. I was requesting that she go before Friends with Tampa Bay Water beforehand. Do we need a motion for that?
That's part of your approval of the agenda and
moved.
addendum.
Okay, a motion by Councilman Citro, a second by Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Anything else?
Oh, and one more. I believe under the addendum, there was something from Councilman Maniscalco regarding adding a commendation to the
Yes,
flavor of West
yes.
Tampa. Should that also be added to the ceremonial agenda then?
Yes. Yeah, he'll be going. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilman Miranda, if you would like to go, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the City Council. You know, for many years, I've had the honor and the opportunity to serve this community. For many years, we have given hundreds or maybe thousands of accommodations. And I can say this, standing here before you today, when this came about, I would say this is in the top 5 of any accommodation that I've had the honor of presenting. And this is because it started not by us asking them. It was them asking then Mayor Friedman that they wanted to do something for the community. And for the past 30 years, the Donatello family, from the famous restaurant, Italian restaurant, and if you haven't been there, you haven't had a good meal. They started this with the blessings of Mayor Friedman, and he just called me. Also, Bobby Bowden was there from day one, and Bobby couldn't make it today, but he told me to do the best I can without him, and so I'll try. This family has done an outstanding thing for 30 years, and every Thanksgiving Day, they have a dinner at the restaurant. And I'd like to present, first of all, his son Gino and lovely wife Alexandria. And I've known Kitty. I just saw Kitty and shook her hand. I hadn't seen Kitty since the Skyliners. And the Skyliners was one of the best groups that always played on Saturday, and very close to what it was then, the Strass Center. There was an old grocery store there, and they used to get jam-packed with teenagers and young men and women. And the music is fantastic, and now she's also part of the Donatello family, and she's has a duo with Majid. I apologize to you. And you didn't have the dark glasses, you'd be like me. There you go. I didn't say it for that reason. I said that, you know, we look alike. But what I'm trying to say is, nowhere 30,000 people have been served by this family on Thanksgiving the last 30 years, about 1,000 a year. And that leaves a warm heart in my mind, because most of these kids that come there and their families that come in are from foster children and their families that are helping them out. Sometimes they are forgotten. Along with them, some of the Boys and Girls Club come in, and many other organizations. And it's just an unbelievable thing what they do. Not only do they serve them a first-class meal for Thanksgiving Day, but they also give them gifts. Every child that comes in there gets a gift on the way out. And we didn't ask for it. They came to see Mayor Friedman. Your father, Guido, did. And no relation. You related to Guido? You related to Guido?
I'm one of the 5, and I think there's 4 Guidos left in Tampa. I keep a tab.
I just want to make sure I didn't miss out on that. But what your father started in your family, along with your lovely mother, Alexandria, it's an amazing thing. And I'm proud to be here today and read part of this combination. The Tampa City Council is honored to recognize Donatello's Italian Restaurant for the generosity, charitable Thanksgiving dinners every year to family of the community. The contribution of the Taizio family speaks volumes of the value and the commitment to the residents. What you do sometimes are people that we forget about, in essence, in life, real life. And what you do is give somebody hope, somebody an admiration, somebody a step up instead of a push down. And for that, you have to be gratified by all of us. Your family has done an outstanding work, and for many years. And Victor, he's their barber. He used to be my barber, but with a head like this, he went out of business. And but Victor's been helping them along with Bobby Bowden and Marvin Knight. They show up with a bunch of individuals in the community who, if I name one, I'm gonna miss them all. And they show up to help. When you serve 1,000 people, you need help. And if you haven't been to the restaurant, try it. You'll go back. On behalf of Tampa City Council, it's my honor to represent the Elsa family, this combination for what your father started along with your mother. And she was by his side all the way. And we really appreciate it very much. And we really appreciate it. Benaka, I want to say anything.
Thank you. Without taking too much time, I just say a few words. First of all, thank you to the City of Tampa for supporting us for 35 years. Really, without the people of the city supporting the restaurant, this would not be possible. Like Mr. Miranda said, my father started this event along with Ms. Friedman because he wanted to give something back to the city and to the people that were most needy. They really created the event, and it's the people that are here with me are been instrumental over the years in continuing it. Primarily for my stepmother Alessandra of 30 plus years. She's really been the driving force in growing it, making it become the event that it has. Ms. Kitty and Majid have donated their time to play on Thanksgiving Day for all of the visitors that come to the restaurant for 20 years now. And Victor has been a volunteer with us for many years also. And again, like Mr. Miranda said, to feed 1,000 people in one day, we have 50, 60, 70 volunteers that show up every year without us calling them or asking them repeatedly. Different people from different event organizations, from high school kids to all different types of people, again, from this all around the city of Tampa that come in and help us make the event possible. If without them, we'd still be serving Thanksgiving Day dinner by the time next Thanksgiving came. So yes, thank you again, primarily to City of Tampa and Tampa City Council. Thank you for having us, and thank you for this recognition.
And let me say from experience, if you want to listen to a good combo, and sometimes there's a trio there, Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. At the lounges, you go into the left, Kitty, and et al. See, it's fantastic. I remember her when we were all teenagers. She still looks young. I don't know what happened to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And before y'all go, Councilman Dingfelder, then Councilman Maniscalco.
Mr. Miranda, thank you. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Donatella's family, and we appreciate all the hard work and the community that you do for this event. On a personal note, it's been a big thrill for me to be on City Council over the years, but a bigger thrill was the opportunity to sit at Miss Kitty's piano and sing with her, because she is a true gem, a true legend in our community, and we love her, and I did have the opportunity to sing, and her ears probably still haven't gotten over it, but thank you.
Councilman Maniscalco.
So I try to go almost every year, at least for the last 10 years, to the Thanksgiving day that you do, and it's insane with the amount of people that you give gifts to, the kids coming through, celebrities coming through, everybody getting a meal there and treated with respect, that they can sit down and enjoy it. My father doesn't miss it. You know him. I mean, he's there regularly. Your father was a wonderful person, and of course I appreciate anybody named Guido, because it's not common, but he was always welcoming of everybody, and it was always a treat. It's always a treat to go to Donatello, because you don't know who you're going to bump into. I've met Robin Williams there. My father's met countless celebrities, sports figures. It's like when I used to go to Malio's on Dale Mabry, you'd always see somebody famous, but you can't beat Donatello. I mean, there's restaurants come and go, Italian restaurants come and go, but you are the authentic, real deal, but you always focus on giving back. And you've always been wonderful to me and my family as friends, not just as customers. So I appreciate it, and thank you for all that you do each year. Thanks.
Thank you, Guido.
Thank you guys very much. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Grazie.
Safe and sound. All right, next up we have Councilman Vieira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a real pleasure to be here today and to give a Tampa City Council commendation to our good friends with Safe and Sound Hillsborough. And I see here our good friends, our State Attorney, Mr. Andrew Warren, Ms. Julie Holt, and wonderful Marie Marino, who's such a great public defender. It's a real pleasure. If y'all want to come up here, y'all may. You know, it's funny, when I was looking over prospective remarks for this, I kept on thinking about the term that has been so maligned in the last 10 years, community organizer. And we all know in what context that's been maligned, but I always think whenever folks talk about the idea of organizing the community, that that's a good thing. That when you take a look at people who need help, the hungry, the poor, the abandoned, those who are at risk, etc., and you give them help, you give them intervention, that's a good thing. Well, that's exactly what Safe and Sound Hillsborough, along with its wonderful community partners who are here, has been doing since 2013. And they do just a real marvelous job in that regard. I know that recently you were here when Councilman Goods brought up for discussion a re-entry ordinance, and that really goes to the heart of what Safe and Sound Hillsborough does. A lot of people talk about the idea of being tough on crime, and there are certainly times when you have to do that, but you've also got to be tough on the causes of crime. That sort of isolation, the family discord, family disruption, etc., the basic things that Safe and Sound Hillsborough get down to the core of. And that's something that we certainly are looking forward to honoring, not just here today, but continuing to honor as community partners with Safe and Sound Hillsborough. So I would like to invite Mr. Parton, if you'd like to come up here and say some words about your organization. And it's our pleasure and honor to give this to you, sir. Thank you, sir. Come on up.
Good morning, council members. Certainly, we're honored to be here to receive this commendation and also to just once again talk about the efforts of Safe and Sound Hillsborough to reduce and prevent violence in our community. As our vision statement says, we work together to promote strong families, safe schools, and healthy neighborhoods. We can't do this work without the strong support of all of you here. The city of Tampa is one of our strongest partners in our effort, and it just speaks to the magnitude of our work when we have our public defender and our state attorney get together and say, what can we do together to make sure that our youth have a positive trajectory in life and that we can address the issues that contribute to violence. We do not want to see Tampa be marked as a place where people don't feel safe. And so we just thank you for your support. We thank you for your continued participation in our events. And what I'd like to do is just to allow you to hear from our Leadership Council Chair, our public defender, my mentor, my friend, Mrs. Holt, as well as another friend and a strong advocate in the community, Mr. Warren.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you all very much for having us here today. And Chair Vieira, thank you so much for this commendation. I just, on behalf of the Leadership Council, want to say that, our efforts really have started to focus tremendously on mental health well-being in our community. And I am hopeful that you will appreciate your role in that particular mission statement that we have, because we recently went out even to as far out as Waimama, and I can tell you everywhere we've been over the last year, the number one concern that this community has is the prevention of violence, and even more importantly, the mental health well-being of its citizens in this community. And they clearly look to us as elected officials and as community partners to help them in that particular quest. So on behalf of the Leadership Council, I thank you for your very strong support. I look forward to continuing to work with each and every one of you. And I want to introduce for just a moment, if I could, the chair of our Mental Health Family Wellbeing Committee, Marie Marino, who has been doing this work on behalf of the Public Defender's Office, Councilman Dingfelder, as you know, for 27 years. And so I want to applaud her efforts today because she has certainly moved us.
Good morning. Just to echo the comments of our public defender and Freddie Barton, Safe and Sound Hillsborough has done so much to embrace the philosophy that we can reduce crime and make our neighborhoods safer by preventing crime, trying to steer kids away from the downward spiral of the system. But I tell you, as much as we look at systemic change within the criminal justice system, Safe and Sound Hillsborough does so much on a person-by-person level. When you go to the events, you watch how the kids interact with the mentors there, with Freddie and his team. When they do something with our law enforcement partners, it makes a difference in those kids, and you can see it in their faces, to know that there are people in this community who care about them, who are working towards making them safer, healthier, stronger, and keeping them on a path to being a productive citizen. And until you actually come to one of those events, and I urge people to come watch what Safe and Sound does on an event-by-event basis, it's hard to appreciate the impact that Freddie and his team have every day on at-risk kids in our community.
Councilman Goods, Councilman Dingfelder.
You know, it's always great when you have a great program and you have great leadership that are running those programs. And I just want to say, Freddie, thank you for coming a couple of weeks ago. You know how entrenched I am in our communities and our young people and young adults who have past indiscretions who are not getting opportunities. And I was thankful that you were able to come and speak because you're dealing with that every day. You understand that. And I'm glad that this council on that day understood that and also had some suggestions to bring back to our legal so we can get something moving in the city of Tampa so we can be the forefathers of getting something great in the city of Tampa as it relates to reentry. Ms. Holt and Mr. Warren, you're doing a fabulous job. I did go to your big council meeting, and I think my aide in your office is working with a date for you to come before council to tell us all the other wonderful programs that you have working on in our county, and we're looking forward to doing that. So I thank you again for the work you're doing, and thank you, Freddie.
Councilman Nico.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo Councilman Good's comments. I've had the opportunity to work with Ms. Holt and Ms. Marino for many, many years, and Mr. Warren for a couple of years now. And this community is so lucky. You know, criminal justice is one of the most challenging, difficult things facing our community, and it affects everybody in numerous ways, whether or not you're a victim or family or what have you. But we're so lucky to have leaders like Mr. Warren and Ms. Holt at the head of their respective teams, because they're working so closely together on these tough issues, and that's the only way we can make progress. And I think we're already standing out in the state of Florida and probably nationally because of that, and we thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Freddie, I think State Attorney Warren said it best, making a difference. Thank you for making that difference. Mr. Warren, Ms. Holt, anytime that this group needs me for anything, please do not hesitate to call me. Together we can make that difference. Thank you, Freddie.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? No? Thank you very much for being here. We appreciate your service to this community and all that you do. Thank you very much. All right. All right. Next up, Councilman Citro. Your CRH, I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to do a flavor with it.
Okay. You got it.
That's how it works. What's the CRH?
There you go. I'll work with that. Ladies and gentlemen, now Councilman Maniscalco is going to be giving a commendation.
There you are. All right. And then just come on. We have this presentation or this commendation for the Flavor of West Tampa Sangria and Cigars, presented by the West Tampa Chamber of Commerce, to be held this Sunday. What is it, 12 to 3?
11 to 4.
11 to 4. So those watching and folks in the audience, it's a great event. Tampa City Council honors the Flavor of West Tampa Sangria and Cigars, presented by the West Tampa Chamber of Commerce. This is West Tampa's signature event that brings together the West Tampa community, its businesses and organizations that share all that West Tampa has to offer, with attendees from throughout the greater Tampa Bay area and beyond. The event brings new visitors to West Tampa, highlighting the community's historic roots and enhancing West Tampa's image as a great place to live, work, and play. A portion of the proceeds will be donated to the Judeo-Christian Health Clinic, which has served our community for over 40 years, and their great work provides low and moderate income individuals with critically needed medical and dental care. Tampa City Council recognizes your compassion, enterprising endeavors, and your selfless efforts for this most worthwhile event at Julian Lane Park, correct? Yes. It is with great pleasure that the Tampa City Council presents you with this commendation on the 7th day of November 2019.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Go ahead.
Thank you, Guido, and distinguished City Council members. We, on behalf of the West Tampa Chamber of Commerce, we truly appreciate this Tampa City Council commendation. Just a little bit again about the event. It's a tribute to the history and the heritage of West Tampa, which is rich, talking about culture and history, as well as the West Tampa of today. So it's all inclusive of everything of West Tampa, which is a great community here in Tampa. One of the primary reasons we as a chamber put this event on is to help support a local West Tampa Chamber nonprofit organization. for a West Tampa community nonprofit organization, the Judeo-Christian Health Clinic. So with that being said, I'd like to introduce Kelly Bell. She's our executive director of the Judeo-Christian Health Clinic, and she'll give you a few words about the clinic. Again, hope to see you this coming Sunday. One last thing before I forget, if I don't do this, this is for each of the city council members, distinguished members. We have a nice wine tumbler here for you. You'll get it before the end of the meeting. And also, special invitation with this, you get a VIP pass for each of you to be special guests at our event this Sunday. Hope to see you there. Thank you.
Is it under $100?
It is. It's $99.99.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this recognition of the event, the Flavor of West Tampa, the 8th year for the event. And the clinic is in its 47th year of service to Tampa Bay and the Hillsborough County area, serving people who are uninsured and who do not have health insurance. The folks who come together to serve our community are volunteers, doctors, dentists, eye doctors, pharmacists. We serve the community with pride. We're honored to do so. We're so grateful to be partnered with the West Tampa Chamber of Commerce, and we thank the City Council today for the recognition.
Councilman Miranda.
My apologies to all of you at the event and to all from West Tampa and all from the city of Tampa, but I will be unable to attend. The state of Florida is sending me on a mission to a place called Oxford, Florida. I usually go to Oxford and another place called Gretna. Anybody know where they're at? Well, I may never come back then. Well, thank you very much, but I got to perform my duties and Saturday and Sunday, so I won't be unable to attend.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Citro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Councilman, having worked with the West Tampa Chamber of Commerce, this has been a very special event over the years, and I know it's going to be even more huge being at the Julian B. Lane Park this year. I will be there Sunday, and Councilman Miranda, I'm sorry that you won't be there because I understand that they're going to be having the Dominoes tournament with handicap. So you might have a chance to win this year.
You know, for all that are listening and all that are seeing this, I challenge this man. He can get any partner he wants. Because I don't play well, but the guys that are coming and the ladies that are coming that I know really play well. So I knew going in I would never win anything.
We're going to miss you Sunday.
I know you're joking with me, and I appreciate it. But now I got a challenge.
It's on. Anyone else? Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, next we move on to our next item. I would invite my good friend, Ms. Karen Clay, to come on up, if you would, Karen. And if you have anybody with you, they may come up. I think most of us, I think all of us here on Tampa City Council know Karen Clay very well. I wanted to invite my good friend, Karen Clay. And Karen is not just, I call her, she's not just my friend, she's one of my heroes. And I don't overstate whenever I say that. Karen is here to talk about an issue of critical importance to the community that I'll be making a motion on at the end of City Council during motion time, involving Medicaid waiver and the great drastic changes that's happening here in the state of Florida and the terrible effect that this is going to have and is having on people with special needs and developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities. It's a cause that Karen is a warrior for and feels in her heart. So Karen, if you go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm here representing the Democratic Disability Caucus of Florida, as well as our Hillsborough County chapter. But first and foremost, I am a mom and a caregiver. I'd like to start off with just one quick comment, Mr. Dingfelder. This is regarding any straw bans. The Disability Caucus opposes any all-out bans, and we request provision upon request. More importantly, I'm here to oppose the Medicaid redesign. It's not a Medicaid redesign at all. That's a very disingenuous term. This is an attack on Florida's most vulnerable citizens. For the majority of Floridians, Medicaid is a lifeline. It's there to protect in case of an economic downturn, a natural disaster like we saw in the Panhandle this past year. And for individuals with disabilities, a Medicaid waiver is a life. It enables individuals to stay in their homes and communities, leading meaningful, productive lives. Many employed, but with the help of personal care assistants, job coaches, etc. Medicaid waivers are cost-effective. They cost less than institutional care. And individuals wouldn't even qualify for this Medicaid waiver unless it costs less than institutional care. The estimate to reopen the institutions in the state of Florida would cost approximately $3.4 billion annually. So we're actually asking the state, actually having to fight with the state to save money. The disability community knew nothing about this redesign. It came about as an amendment during conference. Yet APD and ACA had been meeting for months prior to this amendment. Now everything is on the fast track. And we were never invited except to one public meeting in July. And at that point, people were asked to make comments, and they submitted them. And APD and ACA tried to keep that out of the public realm. The population that we're talking about is the most vulnerable of the vulnerable, comprising only 0.15% of our total population here in Florida. That's 34,500 individuals that are receiving services. There are another approximately 22,000 people on a waiting list, and they're not waiting just for weeks or months or years, but decades. We currently rank 50th in the nation, that's what I passed out to all of you, in funding. And advocates, the APD, and national experts have tried to explain the only way to achieve budget predictability is to build in an annual increase. And yet every year they continue to balance the budget on the backs of Florida's most vulnerable citizens. We can do better. My only question to you is Florida more fiscally bankrupt or morally bankrupt? So I'm asking you today to oppose any cuts to this Medicaid, if they call it the I budget or Home and Community-Based Service Waiver. And I'm also asking that this council will sign on to an organizational letter that we have prepared for the governor and all of the leadership of the legislature so that they know that the citizens, not only of the state of Florida, are opposed to any cuts to this waiver, but also organizations across the country. Thank you again.
And thank you, Karen. I know some council members will want to chime in. I'll be making a motion on that at the end. I just wanted to thank you for your leadership. I know this cause is very personal to us with your wonderful son, Mike, and my oldest brother, Juan, who's developmentally disabled. It's something that I saw my parents live with for all their life, and I see people live with it still, and it makes me angry. Every year that I read about the legislature and our governor, for example, cutting taxes by $250 million a year, Karen, we know where that money's coming from. We know where that money's coming from. And I always say, I've said this a million times and I'll say it here, that whenever it comes to the state of Florida, we have the population from California, but we got the legislature from Mississippi whenever it comes to issues like this. And it makes me angry. It should make us all angry, and that's why we should demand change. So thank you for that. Anyone? Councilman Carlson.
I just want to quickly thank you for your leadership and all the education you provide in the community, and most importantly, your compassion for everyone who has special needs, and how you care for the community and keep us aware of these issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilman Cruz.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for your leadership on this issue. It's always you're a champion of those with disabilities, and I've known Ms. Clay a while, and I know her fight, and she's always been a fighter on these issues. Sometimes you have to experience things to really understand them. You know, I have sick family with disabilities, my father, so I understand that when you are another caregiver, people don't understand the emotional and mental strain when you are a caregiver of a child or adult. It's a lot of work, and you're trying to maintain your daily life as well, and your health. So again, I commend you on your efforts. I'm a great supporter, and I just think that a person with experience, I know what it feels like. So keep up the good work and keep up the good fight, Ms. Clay.
Thank you, I will.
And I'll be making that motion at the end. And again, I wanted to commend you when you talk about that philosophical tradition of the Roosevelt, Truman, Kennedy, Johnson, Humphrey. That's you, Karen Clay. I mean it.
We can and should do better. We're actually ranked as the second most fiscally sound economy in this country, and we have the 9th strongest economy in this country, and yet we refuse to do better for the disabled of our state.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, Karen. Okay, next we move onward to Tampa Bay Water. Councilman Carlson, I know you had I guess it was a 10-minute presentation, and if you wish to begin,
Yeah, so there are two organizations here, Southwest Florida Water Management District and also Tampa Bay Water. Who's going to go first? Where are you guys? So the purpose of this is to do short presentations on the regional context. You all know that I'm a regionalist. I try to make sure that we coordinate region-wide on issues and that we're sensitive of regional issues. And so since we had conversations on water a couple months ago, this was the soonest we could get on the schedule, but just to have them present what their regional perspective is on water.
Can somebody load the presentation? Okay, there we go. Great. Okay, just to introduce myself, I'm Amanda Rice from the Southwest Florida Water Management District. I'm the Assistant Executive Director. And Brian Armstrong, our ED, asked me to apologize. He would have been here, but he had appointments in Tallahassee today. In case you aren't familiar with us, we're one of 5 water management districts in the state of Florida. We are created by statute. We represent 16 counties, all are part of 16 counties, and we're one of the big 3. So there are 5, but there are 3 quite large ones, us, St. John's, and then the South Florida Water Management District. We have 4 areas of responsibility shown here: water supply, water quality, natural systems, and flood protection. And as part of our water supply function, one of the big things that we do is regional water supply planning. So this requirement of us is defined by statute. Every 5 years, we do have to develop a regional water supply plan that looks at demands, environmental constraints, strategies to meet the demands. And our latest update is actually due next year. It's being prepared right now. So this is a bit of a sneak peek at what we're going to be seeing in our regional water supply plan update for demands. This graphic is just for the public supply sector only. We do develop demand projections for many other sectors, including agriculture, industrial, mining, and so forth. But this is just for public supply, supplied through utilities. And this is also organized by region. So you can see here that we are expecting about 105 MGD, million gallons per day increase for regional demands between 2020 and 2040. And almost half of that is going to be for the Tampa Bay region. But we do have some good news. This graphic kind of shows the success we've had to date. So this graph, those blue bars, are groundwater use. The green line is population growth, and the orange line is total water use. So that includes other supply sources, alternative water supply, surface water, and so forth. You can see that despite the fact that population has really increased, we have been keeping up with that through demand reductions. And that's been made possible by conservation efforts, the development of alternative water supply, and also conservation, alternative water supply, and a very large reclaimed water network across our 16 counties. But the good news is that we feel like we can meet this new demand coming through our cooperative funding initiative and our cooperators. So in the past, Tampa Bay Water, we have invested $315 million. And the sister regional water supply authority down south, the Peace River Minnesota Regional Water Supply Authority, we've invested $136 million to date. And over the last 8 years, on average, our annual cooperative funding initiative budgeting has been $51 million per year.
We expect that in order to meet this large demand projection coming over the next 20 years, our cooperative funding initiative spending is going to have to go up over the next 10 years by about another $20 million. So about $70 million per year for cooperative funding. And that's going to be accomplished by us doing a little bit of prioritization on our more traditional projects that we have coming in order to get these large water supply initiatives built. So we do have a board workshop scheduled for December 10th at our Brooksville office at 9 a.m., where we're going to be talking about all of the alternative water supply initiatives that are being implemented across our region. We're going to be doing some financial projections for our board, talking about our financial engine and what they can expect over time. So that's going to be a really good discussion on these issues. I'll come back to that. So this is a slide just to show some advantages of regionalism that we've seen in terms of water supply development. Another one that's not shown here is integration of a diverse supply sources in an area really gives the ability to rotate those supplies to deal with climatic changes, environmental changes, and also emergency conditions. So we get an economy of scale, cost effectiveness. Regionalism has really been proven to be very beneficial to the water management districts in terms of implementing large-scale water supply initiatives. And in order to ensure that we're really focusing on regionalism, our board has prepared a cooperative funding policy that guides our staff. So this policy defines multi-jurisdictional agencies like regional water supply authorities and directs us to prioritize funding for those multi-jurisdictional entities. And in fact, it states that if a member government of a regional water supply authority proposes a potable water supply project, it must be submitted by the regional water supply authority to be considered for district funding. So I mentioned before we have 4 areas of responsibility. Another that I mentioned is flood protection. We've had some really significant and very impactful projects with the city of Tampa that some of them are ongoing. Over the last 5 years, we've had 11 projects with the city totaling $33.5 million in district funding. 4 of those are ongoing. They're shown there as our flood protection projects. Really significant dollar values on these projects, but also really significant positive impact on the citizens of Tampa. So fiscal year 21 applications just came in early October. Those are being reviewed now. We do have 3 requests for the ongoing projects to finish those, and also a new project is being proposed by the city of Tampa, an additional flood protection project. Our board really does enjoy funding these projects because they really do make a significant impact to the citizens. And we want to thank you for being such a great partner to us.
Thank you. So why don't we have Tampa Water present, and then we'll ask questions if there are any.
All right. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Matt Jordan with Tampa Bay Water, and I have some copies of my PowerPoint if you need them. I'm happy to make those available. Just wanted to give you good morning, Mr. Chair and council members. I do want to give you just a brief overview of Tampa Bay Water. But I first wanted to start with going to the there we go. Just a brief history of where we started. Back in 1998, the 6 member governments, after two years of negotiations, we were created in 1998 to be a true regional system. The member governments include the counties of Hillsborough, Pasco, and Pinellas, along with the cities of Newport Richey, St. Petersburg, and the city of Tampa. As part of the formation of Tampa Bay Water, all the member governments relinquished their significant groundwater supplies, or we purchased them from the member governments. And you can see this slide depicts what Tampa Bay Water is today. Back in 1998, we were an idea. We were given this charge to build a true regional system. Well, that's what we have today, and it served us well over the last 20 years. We started off, we were 100% groundwater, and now we have 3 water sources, surface water and desalinated seawater. And those are the reasons that we are have a very robust system, because that helps us along with our reservoir that holds 15.5 billion gallons of water to get through the dry times. This system has been tested throughout the years. Most recently in 2017, we went through a record dry period, and we provided all the water needed by all 6 member governments and didn't have any problem. This just shows the distribution of our water sources over the last year.
And let me interrupt you, sir. That means you have 30 seconds left in your presentation. How much longer do you have?
Just very short.
Okay.
I can summarize it quickly.
We appreciate that.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
So that just shows our distribution. We continue to plan for the region's needs through our long-term master water plan. It's updated every 5 years, and the board just approved that update in December of 18. The desalination expansion, surface water expansion, and additional groundwater.
Yeah,
He's just
go ahead.
getting
2
to the heart
minutes.
of
You
the
may.
whole
Go ahead.
I'm sorry?
You can take 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. And individually, these are the 3 projects that we plan to continue to vet over the next couple of years to make sure we're picking the most reliable, cost-effective, and sustainable project. And individually, each of these projects have the potential for being expanded to provide additional water in the future. As part of our master water plan, we are looking at regional demand management as well. It's not just about building new supplies. We look at several things. One of those is demand management. What can we do through conservation to save the resources of Florida, and realize this through conservation measures. We have a new program working with each member government that wants to participate to be able to help fund your conservation projects. We hope to save over 11 million gallons between now and 2030. We also are looking at the existing system to see what we can do to maximize what we already have. Any bottlenecks, or for example, if we can upgrade our filters at our surface water treatment plant, then we can get more capacity. We're spending very little money. I wanted to touch a little bit on water quality. Our water quality, we certainly meet all the state and federal requirements. We also have requirements under what we call Exhibit D. These are parameters that were provided by or approved by the member governments. We do meet those, and we monitor those and report to the board and the member governments. We are going through a process to look at our water quality to see if we can make good water quality even better. So we're going through that evaluation. You can see right now we're in the early stages of that. We're concluding the first round of the study, and we'll be moving forward, continuing to work with all the member governments, and then make a recommendation to our board.
If you want to take 45 seconds to finish up, you may.
Actually, that's pretty much the areas that I wanted to cover. The next slide is questions.
Okay. Thank you.
A little quickly, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address those.
Thank you for your presentation. Councilman Miranda, then
Thank you
Councilman
very much.
Dingfelder.
I didn't know the city of Tampa. I didn't notice them there. Now I see that the water department is here. I don't know if you have any questions or anything you'd like to say. I'm not trying to be out of line, but how many customers do you serve?
Well, when we include the city of Tampa, it's around 2.4 million.
No, customers, 6.
6, yes, 6. 6 member government. We're wholesale, yes.
And the reason I brought that up, and I'm not trying to be different or difficult, I'm not that way, but I can tell you this. Every year I've sat there from 1998 to present, minus 4 years that Mayor Oriel sat there. And I've always voted against the budget, one item, and that's the one you advertise. And I've always said, why do you have to spend money when you only have 6 customers? Not 600,000, 6, and you're smiling because I'm smiling. When you go get gas at the gas station, ask yourself this question. Do you say, hi, I got gas, but I wonder where the oil came from to make the gas? If you do, raise your hand. Why do we have to do that? Where you got to spend, and I got this the other day in the Tampa Bay Times, which is very nicely done, but you only have 6 customers. Why do you have to advertise yourself? If I only had 6 votes or you think I'd spend $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 to get elected? Absolutely not. So what I'm trying to tell you is, get that money and put it to somebody who may need a water credit and doesn't have the money, just like Donatello did, and try to help the people who really need it. And all of us forget, and some of us remember. That's one of the things that just gets under my skin, that we're spending money on advertising when we don't need to. That's my opinion. And by the way, there's been opinion of one, not of the other 8 members, if I recall. I'm going to be very upfront. So I look at those things, and then the good people from SwiftMud brought up reclaimed water. I don't want to get into a debate with both of you, but I'd like to see both of you meet with the city of Tampa. It's getting to the point that I'm seeing what came about, what we saw, is starting to come around again. When it was not Tampa Bay water, when it was West Coast, that was when the wars were on between governments. And millions and millions and millions of dollars were thrown away of public funds fighting each other, governments fighting another government. And I certainly don't want to get to that era. But there is a possibility that that's going to come up, whether it's by government or by people who do that. I have a problem personally when I pay a tax and I cannot get that direct line to whether I get a refund or not, doesn't matter. That I have to go to another agency who was never elected body, who has never served an elected body, to get their permission, and they have to okay it to send it up to SwiftMud. I really believe in taxation and representation go one in hand. And those are the things that bother me as an individual. That's why I vote consistently against that. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying that's how I feel. And I guarantee you, if I ask the public behind you to raise their hand, they didn't even know that. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong, but I got to compete. I meaning the city of Tampa. We have to compete for the same dollars as anyone else. We have to compete against your entity, sir, a great entity, Tampa Bay Water. But I have to get the approval of Tampa Bay Water to submit to SwiftMud to get something back. If not, they don't even look at it. That's the way I think the system works. And I'm just letting it out, betting it out now, because it's been on my throat, and I'm choking. And I just got to say what I got to say. It's the same thing as giving the felons the right to vote. When they get out, you say, oh, you got to pay your restitution. How can they pay restitution? They served 15 years in jail. Where they got the money at? So I'm not comparing to that, not gotten to that level yet, but it just bothers me that by policy we do that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Dingfelder, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, sir, thank you for coming down today, as well as SwiftMud's representative. I think most of us were around, as Charlie mentioned, Mr. Miranda mentioned, during the water wars, and it wasn't pretty. Personally, I was over in the county attorney's office at that time, and that's not the way government should operate, and fighting with each other is not the way. I just want to make it abundantly clear before I say what I say that I haven't taken a position on the reuse issue that's been going on. I haven't taken a formal position, and I'm not taking one today. But as long as you're here, and SwiftMud is here, and Mr. Baird is here, it does strike me curiously. On the one hand, the district says we need to identify more water sources. Nice lady's nodding her head. And that's obvious. We have growth. We have to identify water sources, whether or not that's conservation as a source. It's a legitimate source. It's worked pretty well for a couple of years, or other means. The district has a rule that says that if we're going to be part of a member organization like we are, and we want an alternative water supply contribution from the district, we need to get sort of permission, or at least a majority of votes from Tampa Bay Water. And I understand this past year we've had a little trouble with that. As Charlie says, I won't go into detail about it, and I won't ask you to. Mr. Baird and his team over many, many years, I think Brad said it's probably been 25 years, his entire career with the city, have always looked at this reuse plan to ship water from the treatment plant back up to the reservoir, inject it, what have you, and reuse it in that way. But, and again, I'm not taking sides on this, Mr. Carlson. I just want to flesh it out a little bit in public. But we hit a stumbling point. Mr. Baird hit a stumbling point. Mr. Miranda hit a stumbling point when they brought that to your group of six members who apparently have objections to it. I'm having trouble conceptually with that. Not on the legal side. I can handle all the legal arguments all day long, but I don't think the public really wants us to get into those legal battles again. But just conceptually, I'm having trouble with why any member governments would have trouble with another member government trying to find a future water use like that.
And we have, as far as Tampa Bay Water, we've been working through probably a year and a half or 2 years, a variety of committees, whether it was utility directors of all the member governments, including Tampa Bay Water staff, and some of these in our master water plan. We also had the attorneys from all the member governments working and looking at these questions and how can these things be done, and how, interpreting the interlocal agreement, which is one of our governing documents that we agreed to follow. And so that's what we've been doing, working together and studying this, and the board was contemplating that and having discussions, and there's certainly various opinions. And and currently, the proposal was withdrawn by the city, and that's where we are right now.
I understand all that, but I guess I need a little more explanation in terms of the justification of other member governments. And I'm not talking about legal documents.
Right.
I'm a lawyer, I can handle that, but I don't think the public wants that to be the decision maker.
Right.
I'm talking about the rationale, the justification for a sister member government across the bay, or various member governments in your organization, that could oppose the opportunity for 10, I don't know how many, 20, 30 MGD of reuse. And whereas there's a lot of reuse going on all over. I saw it on the young lady's graph. And that's a positive, I think generally that's a positive thing. So that's why I'm just trying to get a better handle of conceptually what, is this just a legal argument? Is this a financial argument? Or is this a philosophical or perhaps environmental argument? That's what I'm really trying to get a grip on.
Yes, sir, and I think all those things are part of the discussion. And, back a few years ago, when we were asked to look at our master water plan to include, can we include reclaim as part of our master water plan? And so through our member government working group with all member government staff, we went through several meetings, and ultimately it was proposed that we should add to the master water plan the Tampa augmentation project. And of course, at that time, there was, I think, a different phase of it, earlier phase of TAP. And we were also asked to include SHARP, which is the Hillsborough County injection near the coast. And we continue working through those. Last fall, I think it was, the TAP, and TAP had changed to the current configuration during this time. And when we understood that water that was no longer available, we were looking at a different way of using that reclaimed water. And as far as can we look at alternate water supplies and how can we do it, Well, that's precisely what we're doing with the Sharp project. It's still one of the 3 projects that was ranked, and we are currently vetting that along with the other 2 projects to see where that takes us. But there's certainly some promise there, and it looks like it could potentially be a good project. We still have to finalize some agreements with Hillsborough County, but that's part of the process we have moving forward. So we looked at both of those. We're continuing to look at Sharp, and we are looking at alternate water supplies and how the region can implement those.
And if I may, Councilman Dingfelder, we have at 10 o'clock to break for staff reports, and we have an abundant amount of staff reports. So I'm going to ask this to end in about 2 or 3 minutes, if you all could. Or if you want to take it up after staff reports, that's fine. But let's at least intervene right now. And if you want to go ahead, Councilman Dingfelder, you may.
Well, I'll just close by saying, I know we've pulled out of that temporarily, but I think it was more or less out of frustration than anything else. And we don't, hopefully, we don't want to litigate it or anything like that. But I just hope that, and I'm saying this to all the member governments, including our own, that I hope we can perhaps hire a mediator and come to some resolution, because we obviously aren't doing very well so far. And I appreciate Mr. Carlson's effort, actually, from this council's perspective, to table this for a while, because it looked like we were sort of dashing into it and running our head into the wall on the issue, and including from council's perspective. So I do appreciate, Bill, you doing that. So we have a little time to breathe, but this issue will come back probably next year. And I just think we need to do a better job. But thank you, sir.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
And just really quick, we've literally got 2 minutes and 2 council members, so 5 seconds.
Just to say that we are working with all member governments. We're certainly welcome those discussions, and we're trying to work with all 6 member governments, including certainly the city of Tampa.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Goods and Councilman Carlson, really fast, if y'all.
Councilman Carlson, thank you for bringing this issue up. I'm not as well versed and knowledgeable as Mr. Miranda and Mr. Dingfelder, and that tells me that the public isn't either. I see 2 entities that I don't even know about, either one. So when Mr. Miranda tells me we're spending this kind of money, or your company's spending this kind of money in advertising, I'm wondering who we're advertising to. I mean, that just makes me wonder, who knows about what you do? Who knows about, is there a board that's combined with all these entities, with Southwest, with you guys? I mean, it's like everyone's at a free-for-all with what we're doing. So I'm just curious, how does this operate?
Yes, sir.
10 seconds. Please.
Yes, and we are doing public outreach. Councilman Miranda talked about that. Public acceptance and education is part of our master water plan process, and that's what you're seeing in some of the information we're putting out.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Carlson, to close.
Just a statement and a quick question for Ms. Rice, if I could, with a quick answer. But we can discuss this as the TAP issue comes up again. My intention today was not to open back up TAP, but as he mentioned, TAP was part of the alternatives for the master water plan for future sources, and the city of Tampa pulled out and wanted to do it themselves. The intent of the region was that new sources would be managed by the regional supplier, and Tampa Bay Water can own the project. We wouldn't have to take on the debt, and they can manage it and run it. It could be a similar project, but the city of Tampa wouldn't have to take that on, and it would stay within the spirit of regional cooperation instead of Tampa doing it itself. My question to you is, Ms. Rice, is could you just describe in a few seconds why it's important to take a regional perspective, and just describe. We do have a 30-year plan for water, so we don't have any urgent. My understanding, we don't have any urgent supply requirements that can't be met by the planning and process they're going through. And also, why is it important to cooperate as a region?
Okay, yes, regionalism has been identified by our board as a priority since our Cooperative Funding Initiative program was started back in the 80s. So this has been a really big focus for us. Some significant benefits are with planning. So you have the entire state of Florida, and then you have 5 water management districts, so that the legislature is not telling our region how to spend that money. You bring it down to a local level. And then these regional water supply authorities bring it down one more step. Without the regional water supply authorities, each of those 11 well fields that's under one cooperative
one
And
consolidated
I'm going to have to
water
ask you
use-
to finish up your statement really
Sure.
fast if you would, because we got to move on.
Absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am.
Every single one of the supplies under Tampa Bay Water, it's a very diverse set of supplies, would be individually permitted by individual entities. It gives the ability for this body of 6 member governments to get together and have much more control and not have the water management district dictating. So it's putting the authority and the decision-making at the right level, and it helps with the planning effort.
Thank you, ma'am. Anything else to close, Councilman? Okay. Thank you guys very much. Thank you, everybody. Okay, next we move to, I know Councilman Carlson pulled this item. I see some folks from Tampa Police Department. I'd like to have them come up first if you guys could. I know y'all are very, very busy. And for staff reports, we're limiting staff reports to 5 minutes each. And we have a lot of staff reports, and I think everybody wanted staff to appear for this. And I have no problem with staff reports for just reports with staff appear, and we're going to have to start to having a more restrained, I guess, maybe 5, 6 per council session. So, because today we got a whole lot. But if you could just calendar each, please, for 5 minutes, I appreciate it. Councilman, if you want to ask your questions, sir. And if you could state your name, sir.
Yes, sir. I'm Lieutenant Pat Messmer with Special Operations Division at TPD.
Thank you, and I didn't call you in here because I'm for or against this. I got a bunch of calls overnight asking what this is for, how it's going to be used, what rights do citizens have in relation to how the drones would be used. It's item number 20, right?
Okay, sure. So we're basically using our unmanned aircraft systems as a way to supplement our helicopters under the auspices of the Freedom from Unwanted Surveillance Act, which is Florida Statute 934.50. Now, that statute actually prohibits us from using drones for evidence gathering or surveillance or really any kind of gathering of information unless certain criteria are met, such as we have a search warrant, we have a suspect who is fleeing actively, we have a missing person we're looking for, or forensically mapping a traffic crash scene or something like that. So any kind of concern that we're going to use this for surveillance or use it for traffic enforcement or monitoring crowds or things like that, we cannot legally do that under the statute. Our policy prohibits us from doing things of that nature, and that's not the way they're going to be used.
One of the pieces of feedback I got, and I don't know anything about the subject, so I appreciate your education on it, but some folks said that there's an exception for potential terrorist targets, and I think the Arab or Muslim community and some other communities maybe are worried about surveillance under the auspices of that. Is that accurate or?
So the way the Act reads, there is a exception to counter a high risk of terrorist attack by a specific individual or organization if the United States Secretary of Homeland Security determines that credible intelligence indicates there is such a risk.
You can't just use it for regular monitoring of a certain group.
We have researched this. There has not been any situation that I'm aware of where the Secretary of Homeland Security has made this determination.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming in at last minute. Thank you.
Councilman Dingfelder.
Thanks, Mr. Carlson. I was talking to the chief yesterday about this item, not only from a security perspective or a privacy perspective, but also from a monetary perspective, because it's $115,000. I said, oh, that's one expensive drone. And then he informed me or reminded me, he said it might be 4 drones.
There's actually 5, and in addition to this, there's actually some training costs. We have to get our officers licensed through the FAA. So there's training costs, there's licensing costs, and these are much more robust, and they have much more advanced capabilities, such as...
Assure us there's no weapons on board, though.
They're not weaponized, and it's actually in our policy that weapons are prohibited on them.
I say that jokingly, but hopefully in all seriousness as well. Will you, this type of, I'm not really sure, like with a helicopter, I would assume that there's always a report made, the helicopter took off for this purpose or whatever, and there's like a daily log or something. Would there similarly be a log for the use of the drones? and perhaps if the answer is yes, that TPD could generate a report to council annually, doesn't have to be in person, just to generate a report to let us know the use of the drones in the future. And that way the public can be reassured that we are staying within the parameters of the statute.
Sure. There will be a documentation kept by the department as to every time they are deployed. The officer who deploys it is going to have to fill out paperwork about that deployment that will be kept and will be open to public records.
Would that be a, I guess my point is could it be in a form of a summary? Obviously, we don't need or want to see the details about the address you might be doing it or something like that, but just in general form so we can make sure that we're staying on top of the statute.
I wouldn't see any reason why not.
Okay, I'll make a motion at the end of the meeting along those lines. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilman Goods.
I guess my question is, will the public, before if this council enacts this, will the public be aware that we're going to be utilizing these type of drones? I don't want to get calls where I see something in the air, so are there be any PSAs or any type of communication to the public that this is going to be happening within the city of Tampa?
I would imagine that our public information office, once we implement the program, will be putting out a social media campaign or mentioning it to the public that it will be used. Now, as to every single deployment, obviously, if we have something going on at 4 o'clock in the morning,
No, that's not what I'm talking about. Before we implement it, that if this body goes along with this recommendation, making sure that the public is aware that this is something the police department will be using, and they know the parameters of why we're using it.
Yes, that is in our plan, is to involve the public information office before we implement the
Mr.
program.
Dingle, let's see if I can make an amendment to your motion and make sure we do that, okay?
Okay, anyone else? Thank you, sir, we really appreciate. And y'all aren't here for any other items, correct?
I'm not. I don't believe anything else is.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. We really appreciate y'all
Thank you.
coming. Thank you, guys. Okay, next we move onward to our, and to let the public know, for staff reports, we usually break at 10 a.m., more or less, Mahomeno, 10 a.m. For staff reports, and that will then push back the prospective time for public comment. Usually we can begin public comment at around 9:35 or 9:40, so we can get most of it done by the time of staff reports, but unfortunately today with our agenda we can't do that, so my apologies, but public comment will be forthcoming in that regard. Okay, next we move to item number 96 for Angus Goss Pool and Baldomero Lopez Pool, and each of these will be 5 minutes each. Mr. Dial. Ma'am, you're not recognized. Thank you, everybody. Mr. Dial. We will, okay, that's it. We're taking a 3-minute recess and we'll come back. Mr. Dial, to calm things down. Thank you. back in session. Mr. Dial. Oh, yes, please.
Yes.
Good morning. Here.
Here. Okay, Mr. Dial, go ahead. And I would ask City Council, we have an abundant number of staff reports today, to move through briskly so that we can get to public comments as soon as possible.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
before Mr. Dow starts, I want to make some comments at the end of the meeting as it relates to this situation here. I think it's due for a conversation, and I just want to let you know, but I appreciate your leadership on the situation.
Thank you, Councilman. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning. Paul Dial, Director of Parks and Recreation. I've been asked to come before you to discuss the future plans for Angus Goss Pool and Balmero Lopez Pool in the city of Tampa. We have provided a report to you several months ago, was provided to you, and just a brief history of that. It does provide a history of both of the swimming pools that were there. They've both been closed for many years. As well as describing the deficiencies at each of the pools at those locations. We have also provided some national standards showing the standards for the amount of pools per population across the country, and by the National Recreation Parks Association, the standard looked at is 1 pool for every 36,000 people. Tampa is about 1 pool for every 32,000 people, so we're a bit ahead of the national standard, and it shows those standards in Florida, and with populations of cities of 250,000 to 500,000, and in that, the 250 to 500,000, it's about 64,000 people per pool, so we're well ahead of those numbers. We also provided some numbers related to attendance and the 12 pool locations and the proximity of those pools to the community. I did want to say that since we talked about this before, there was dollars put into the budget for a study related to the 2 pools. This has evolved over the last few months, and with the mayor approving the funding for the comprehensive Parks and Recreation Master Plan, part of that process will be that these pools will be included and developed in the scope so that this is part of the plan, that we're not doing it separately. It really needs to be combined together and married, because it's all one park system, one group of facilities. So that is part of the master plan process that is going to be going on next year. We're working on a consultant hopefully coming in early in 2020, being selected. If you've noted, we have the master plan meetings that have actually started. We have the second one of those tonight at Kid Mason, where we're hearing from the public and just getting input prior to the consultant coming on board. So it all is kind of pulled together, and that's the update.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilman Dingfelder.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dial. Two things. One, do we still have that swimming pool over by Coleman Middle School off of Manhattan? You know what I'm talking about?
Interbay?
It's another one. I know you're talking about.
Charlie, you know the name? You know the name of it?
I don't know the name of it, but I know what you're talking
You know where I'm talking
Yeah.
about? It's by Coleman Middle School off of West, kind of in that West Shore area.
Off Estrella and
Manhattan.
in the corner. Yeah, it's working. I think it's there. Between Coleman and the elementary school.
Well,
You got the middle school and the elementary school.
I'm pretty
The
sure.
listing of all the pools are listed
Okay.
here.
I'm pretty
So
sure
I'm
it's
not sure of the
still
location.
there and it's still functional. And the only reason I point it out is when I picture in my mind what that pool looks like, I think it was in the same family of generation of pools as the Goss and the
Goss.
Baltimore pool. Because I visualize it. It's above ground, kind of. I mean, not above ground, but it's higher. It has a lot of the attributes that we criticized these 2 pools. I know it's water under the bridge. I think one of the deficiencies now with those 2 pools is they're filled with dirt that didn't get mentioned in your list of deficiencies. But anyway, I think some mistakes were made in the past. I think we need to move forward with the master plan. I hope that will include recreational pools for these communities in some sense. So thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Dow, what is?
Go ahead, sir.
Has there been a cost factor in these pools yet?
That will be part of the process. That will be part of what we'll be looking at within the study of the cost related to the two sites. And again, that will be into the scope for the consultant. But no cost at this time because we also don't have the scope of the project. So you need the scope to know exactly what you're looking at for what facilities are needed by the community before that cost is determined.
Councilman Maniscalco.
I thought for the Angus Gospel pools are about $4 million for a whole brand new, from scratch, not a renovation, but make it ADA compliant and whatnot, and modernizing it.
Again, staff looked at from the concept when we say a pool can be many different things of size. Are you looking at 25 yard, 25 meter, 75 feet? Are you looking at a splash pad with that, a baby pool, office area? So all of those things go into determining the type of facility, hearing from the community as part of the master plan process of looking at determining exactly what you're wanting. The cost that we gave before was an estimate without really having any kind of scope in line at this time. With that, and that would be part of this process.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Anyone else? Councilman Carlson.
Just real fast, could you please, I read your report, but could you please try to look at revenue generating facilities there too? Restaurants or something that would be revenue generating that would help subsidize the rest of it.
Thank you. All right.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Dow.
you.
We appreciate it, sir. Okay, next we move to Ms. Duncan for 97. And again, we're trying to limit everything to 5 minutes each so we can move along briskly, so go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, City Council. Jean Duncan, Transportation and Stormwater Services Department. You had asked for some information regarding our brick streets, and I submitted a report, which you should have in your packet there. The question had to do with our pipes projects that are coming along, which will be, of course, tearing up many of our streets in order to put in new water and wastewater lines. Potentially some stormwater components as well. So we will continue to follow our city code and our protocol of protecting our vitrified brick streets in our historic areas. Any streets that are asphalt, brick, or asphalted over, those will not be restored to any sort of brick condition, and we'll continue the process as we have been. I just do want to say that with the pipes projects coming out, none of those project areas will be within our historic district area for at least a couple of years. So there certainly is some time to continue to look at brick versus asphalt, and if there's any adjustments we would want to make, there's time to do that. But for now, we're going to continue on the same code and protocols we have as we undertake those pipes projects in the city of Tampa.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions for Ms. Duncan? Councilman Dingfelder and Councilman Carlson.
I'll defer to Councilman Carlson. Go second.
This is an issue, of course, of big concern in my district, especially in the Hyde Park area, and they're very concerned about not losing the bricks. And so I'll follow up with you later. I think we probably have to bring this up in another way, but I'd like to see any proposals you might have on ordinances that we can put in to protect the bricks. But one question I was asked is that some other cities have a piece of equipment that can extract the asphalt from bricks. I saw there's an exception in your report on where asphalt is kind of stuck onto bricks and it's difficult to pull it apart, but I understand there's a piece of equipment used in other cities that extracts it on the spot, but that it's kind of expensive. Do we have that, or can we get that?
We do not have that equipment. We are aware of it, and it is very expensive. We also have a really good brick contractor who his experience is demonstrating that a lot of times if some of these bricks can be extracted and stored, that within a certain period of time that asphalt cracks and falls off naturally from the bricks. And so we are really interested in exploring what are some other things we could do to restore the bricks that we do have and reutilize them. The good news is that the pipes projects will not be in the historic area anytime soon. We
So
do
the most
have a-
important interest from my district that I've heard so far is just to retain the bricks,
Right.
so that we can use them again. You know, we have a shortage maybe for 7th Avenue, but some places want to get the bricks restored, but if we lose them forever. Thank you.
Councilman Dingfelder.
Thank you, Ms. Duncan. Yeah, I read the memo dated October 29th, and I guess one thing that I don't understand is, years ago, somebody in their infinite wisdom came along and paved over quite a few brick streets. If we do have to tear up those streets, those bricks are in many cases still there, but they've got asphalt on top of them. Maybe I'm missing something, but if you flip the brick over, isn't it still just a nice usable brick?
That could be the case. The problem we have seen in exploring the reutilization of those bricks is it's very difficult to extract them out with the machines that we have to use without destroying some certain percentage of those bricks. So it's a difficult process to, it would be very labor intensive to extract them out without damaging them in the process with current practices that we use. The protocol has been, if it's asphalted over and those bricks have settled and they're way down in the base of the road at this point in time, that we are not trying to restore them because it's just too.
Well, and I'm not suggesting restoration. I can see where that would be
Right.
very expensive to scrape off or chemically dissolve that asphalt from the top of the brick, but that's why it leads to my question of just flipping it over and using the other side. Brad and his team, I guess they left, but they're going to be digging up the entire street in many cases. I don't know. I think it sounds like we have a little bit of time to look into this, but I'd like us to look into it further in terms of this notion of just using the flip side. Now, one other suggestion.
And just to, quickly, if I may interject, Councilman Dingfelder, let's hurry up and wrap this up because we want to move forward. And then I know Councilman Maniscalco also has a question, but go ahead, sir.
Okay. One other question. Down at the bottom, it speaks to $2.3 million per linear mile for a two-lane street. But I don't know how that compares to the price of just standard paving for a linear street.
So
I don't
that
think
that was done within the time frame we had to kind of give a sense of order of magnitude. There's a lot of different dynamics that could come in terms of, in this particular case, what would be. That's not a hard and fast number for every single case.
Right, but
Just
I don't
sort of
see
like-
it. I don't have anything to compare it to.
Mhm.
So for future reference, I think that's important. So we know, okay, it might be an additional investment, but as you know and you advocate, brick streets are a traffic calming device.
Yes.
Which is really kind of nice. So we don't have to put in speed bumps and have constant complaints. My street is a brick street. It's always been a brick street. It's got a park at the end of it, but people tend to drive a lot slower because they don't want to rattle their car to death on the brick street, which is fine with me. The only other thing I want to say, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the time constraint, is in regard to this notion that this isn't just a historic district issue. There are streets all over town that got paved over, that lost their brick streets. In Palmacia and I'm sure in Seminole Heights and other places that are not strictly designated historic districts. So I think we need to be cautious on that one as well. Thank you, Gene.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Tom Snelling.
The priority made over brick integrity.
Ma'am, I'm sorry. Tell you, ma'am, if you would like to, do you want to step outside and speak with me? I would like to do that. Would you like to do that? Step outside and speak with me? Yes. Let's do that. Let's, if Guido.
All right.
Let's.
Mr.
3
Sallin?
homeless people died in the city last
Ma'am,
month on these
outside.
streets. It's a problem, not the brick integrity of the streets, of the fancy streets that you live on.
Mr. Sallin?
Good morning, excuse me. Good morning, Council. Tom Snelling, Planning and Development. There's two items here, 98 and 99. Excuse me. Addressing 98, our request was to go ahead and combine the motion that we have today and continue to the February 6th motion. It's virtually the same motion with a little bit more detail on the February 6th, because you drill down into the actual expense in that. And our request is to just to roll this motion, remove it from today, and just roll it into the February 6th discussion. That was basically the request.
If you want a motion, I'll give you one, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
I'll move that.
To what
Thank
date?
you, Council.
February 6th, was it?
February 6th.
All right.
Combine them two and roll them into February 6th.
All right, so 98 and 99 will be combined to, into one item for February 6th. We have a motion from Councilman Dingfelder with a second from Councilman Carlson. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any other discussion? No, thanks. All right, sir.
Well, that was painless, Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, item 100 regarding current code ordinance as it relates to marijuana dispensaries. Anybody here for that?
Staff.
Okay.
Good morning, Andrea Zellman. As you'll recall, back in September, I provided you with a 4-page memo and a discussion regarding the limitations on the city's ability to regulate the location of medical marijuana treatment facilities, as well as the cultivating and processing facilities. And again, just to reiterate, the state has expressly preempted the regulation of such facilities. The only limitation you can place on a cultivating and processing facility is to require that it be located no closer than 500 feet from a school. With the dispensaries, the city had the option to outright ban them, but once a city or county decided not to ban them, as the city of Tampa did back in 2017, again, the only locational requirement was the 500 feet distance from a school, which in the case of dispensaries, the city can waive pursuant to a special use permit process. The statute also expressly states that you can't have any limitations on their location that's more stringent than what would be allowed for a pharmacy, a drugstore in the city. So the point being, we did look, we did research, we did discuss this with other jurisdictions. Really, any further zoning restrictions on these facilities are preempted by the state. So there really is nothing more that the city can do in these instances than we are already doing under our code.
All right, Councilman Citro, and then Councilman Good.
If you don't mind?
Sure.
Thank you, very briefly. Ms. Summit, we have no litigation coming up on this. May I be able to speak freely?
Do we have any ongoing litigation on this item?
Yes.
No, we don't.
Okay, this is just another example. People in the audience, people out in the viewing, this is just another example of Tallahassee tying your hands, not our hands, not city council's hand, and I'm not speaking for city council, this is me speaking. They're tying your hands. You can't come to tell us where we cannot put these grow houses and dispensaries. I personally would not like to see them in neighborhoods. People have the right, if recreational marijuana passes, they will have the right to smoke marijuana. That's not for me to say. But where these grow houses and where these dispensaries are located, yes, I can have a voice in that. Ladies and gentlemen, Tallahassee is tying your hands, not ours. We're unable to listen to you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Good.
It just sickens me. It sickens me that we have no power to stop this type of facility from being in neighborhoods, especially neighborhoods that are already under stress. It really angers me, and I don't know what other people, other cities are doing, but apparently they're doing something because they're not allowing it. Now, I know the city might say we don't want to get into a litigation situation, but apparently those other cities, they don't care about that process. They don't care about a litigation process because obviously no one has started to litigate against them. I don't like to be a person who runs from a situation. I don't want our legal department to feel that if we do not do nothing, or if we do something, we're going to get sued. We get sued every day. The city does. But I'm really disheartened that we can't even put an ordinance in place to say it needs to be on an open highway. We can't put an ordinance in that says it needs to be away from residential people. People can smoke marijuana. I don't care about that. My thing is putting something like that in a community. And if we can't do that, I think I'm probably going to make a motion at the end that we get some kind of resolution to send to Tallahassee, and hope council will support me on that, because I just think it's wrong that that Ms. Zelman's office can't do anything to help our citizens. Not your fault, but I'm frustrated that we can't do something to do something for the people.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Anybody else? Thank you very much. All right, we'll go to item. Yes, sir.
Could you, number 66, which was pulled, do you want to take that up now, or do you want to wait on it?
What is 66?
Or do you want to do that at the end of the staff report?
Let's do the staff reports first. There's two left. So, number 101 regarding local government entities from encouraging them to contract with companies to use. Or
That is Mr. Chairman's, that is Mr.
Okay, so
Vieira's
we'll wait on
case.
that.
If we could hold that, I believe he's going to handle that under new business.
All right, now we have what's happening with the benches in Likes Gaslight Park, item 102, which was initiated by Councilman. Okay. Just a moment.
Morning, Council.
Good morning.
Sal Ruggiero here to speak on Gaslight Park.
Okay.
Approximately a year ago, the benches were removed. And but I'm here to talk about what's going to happen with the park now, what we're looking at. It's a positive. I think that with Tampa developing into a world-class city, this is going to be like a world-class amenity along with some other things, in the future. The goal right now, through the mayor, is to renovate and activate all the parks in the city. But the goal here is to make the park a key downtown economic asset and become known as downtown Tampa's town square. So what we're looking at right now, and it's still in the early stages of development, is that we're going to allow the downtown partnership to put a cafe in the Gaslight Park, along with seating, and try to regenerate that area. So, like I say, the talks are still ongoing. We believe the redevelopment of the space will enhance the overall appearance and make it more inviting for residents and visitors to enjoy. And that's the goal here. It's a positive step, I think. I have some examples of what it may look like. Some parks in New York City that have that's one in Central Park, and this is a concept of the cafe style, and you can see where people are enjoying the space and all that. And then there's a little diagram there where it might show up in where the concept of where it might show up in Gaslight Park. So I think overall, the space is going to get regenerated and a more positive use coming up. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Carlson, then Councilman Scalco, then Councilman Goods, and then Councilman.
Yeah, I think we have. I've got flooded with emails and calls since Mr. Frego's story came out, and I think we have several people who want to speak on this in public comment. But the problem with this now is that the last mayor politicized this park, and through his actions, he showed that he didn't like homeless people and he didn't care about poor people. And now, because this park is politicized, whatever good ideas might come out, the problem is that the community sees it as a symbol of his disdain toward homeless people. And so somehow we have to resolve that issue and then maybe come back to discussing what could be done with this particular park. But we've got to address sensitivity and compassion for homeless people and poor people in the city. As I presented a couple weeks ago, the number one issue we're facing is the high poverty rate in our city, which didn't get any better and I think even got worse in the last 8 years. And we've got to really focus on this. And the pictures look beautiful. I've been to some of the parks you're talking about, and I see that in those parks like Bryant Park and others, there's public access and there's not just seating for cafe owners, but somehow we've got to address this issue because the community is very upset about it. Thank you.
Councilman Maniscalco.
I remember during one of the college championship games, some groups were feeding individuals in the park, and they were arrested, and a video went viral. We were getting emails from, I don't know, Amsterdam, Holland, parts of Europe that were criticizing us for the arrest of these individuals that were feeding those in need. And I remember having to amend the ordinance where you can have so many number of individuals in a park without having to pull a permit and whatnot. And my quote in the paper was, in the Times, "We need more love and compassion." And the response to that was, later on, a year ago, removing the benches from the park for renovation, and then they couldn't be renovated. I don't understand. You know, I can't go to church on Sunday and call myself a Christian and allow this nonsense to go on. You know, we're human beings. We need to treat each other like human beings, and we don't see that. I'm not blaming you. I'm not blaming one in particular, but we need to do better as a society. What I heard the other day was we forget that we are brothers and sisters in love, not in Christ, in love, just in that. And, you know, so many of us are one step away from homelessness, houselessness, losing our job, you know, not being able to make that rent, whatever it is. And we just need to treat each other better as human beings. And something as simple as sitting in the shade, because it's hot. Even in the shade, it's hot. You know, I've met so many individuals at Likes Gaslight Park all throughout, and you ask them, how did you get here? What is your story? What happened? And the stories that you hear, they break your heart. And then when it happens to somebody that you know, and I learned a lot through the Great Recession because we were seeing people losing their jobs, losing their homes, so many bad things, and people are finally, 10 years later, getting back on their feet. You know, going back to it, we need to do better as people and as a society and treat one another with better respect. And when I saw the benches being pulled up and replaced with flower pots, I go, this is a park. What if I want to go there and have a sandwich on my lunch break or whatever it is and enjoy the park, you know? But then there's people that they have nowhere to go, and all they do is get shuffled around, and that's it. And you know, we forget what it means to be a decent person when we treat, you know, people in this manner. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Goods and Councilman Dingfelder.
You know, sometimes we sugarcoat things instead of just telling the truth about how things really are. You know, my friend Sal, we worked together before. He knows about homeless people. He's sometimes had to put people out of apartments, and they become homeless right then and there because they can't pay their rent. So, again, it goes back to experience, understanding how people feel. You know, a park. And trust me, I've been talking about parks since I've been here. Mr. Miranda brought it up clear as day. Parks are the livelihood of communities and people. That's where they go just to think and meditate sometimes, to be healthy, to get healthy. We have a homeless situation. You know, I'm fortunate, a gentleman came to see me last week who has an idea about a homeless situation, how we can help those mothers who don't have a place and they got the children in the car all night long. And the officer comes up, so you got to move along. You got to move along. You can't be here. Or an older gentleman who's homeless in a car somewhere in the city. You got to move along. But this gentleman came up with a good concept, and I'm probably going to have him come and share it with my colleagues here in a couple of weeks so the community and the people can see this idea. Where you have mothers who all night long with these kids, and they go to McDonald's to bathe them to get them ready for school in the morning. So I've seen that. It's just heart-wrenching. So I'm hoping that if we're talking about a concept for this park, and again, Mr. Chairman was able to get that $400,000 to get this park conversation going, where is it going to come from? Is it coming from the general fund to fix this park? Is it coming from the CRA dollars to fix this park? Is it coming from public dollars to fix it? Is the downtown partnership will have control of this park, or will it still be operated under the office of the city of Tampa and not by the partnership? Because I got several calls on that saying, well, will the partnership be control of this? Because they feel the partnership is controlled, and we may again have a disdain for homeless people or poor people being in that park. So I want to make sure that we look at all those aspects, that anybody can go to that park to get something to eat if they're homeless or not. They may look terrible, but if they got money to pay something to get something to eat, I want to make sure that no one's turned away or forced not to be in the park. So I want to make sure all those avenues or really looked at before I would even make a vote on that. Thank you, Sal.
Thank you, Councilman Goots. Councilman Dingfelder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I love the passion of my fellow councilmen, all three of you, in regard to this issue. I think I agree with you completely, especially Mr. Maniscalco in regard to the Judeo-Christian values that we all assert on the weekends, and we need to make sure that we assert it on the weekdays as well. From a practical perspective, couple of things. Number one is, I think if we're worried about people sleeping on the benches, obviously, I think in this city and many other cities, there are benches that have barriers or little humps to keep people from sleeping on the benches, and yet still allow the benches to be functional for sitting. So if that was the problem before, then I think we should return the benches to the park, but make sure that they're not for sleeping. Excuse me.
And sir, I'm sorry.
The other thing I wanted to point out was I think it's a great idea to activate all of our parks, or as many parks as possible, with vendors. And I see the Downtown Partnership leadership is here in the back, and I'm glad, because I don't want the signal to be wrong that necessarily that we're opposed to putting a restaurant in that or any other park. I think that's great, but I don't think it needs to be one or the other. I think that we can have benches and we can have a restaurant with proper seating. So I hope the administration takes that as a two-prong approach. And then finally, on a slightly related note, Council's been having this discussion on a weekly basis about a park further up, a small pocket park further up that's under renovation, up Franklin Street. What's the name of it? Anybody help me?
Herman Massey.
Massey Park, thank you. Massey Park, where you have a next-door neighbor who wants to do a restaurant to activate the park that would help with the homeless situation. It's the exact same situation, and yet she doesn't seem to be getting a whole lot of traction or cooperation with the city. And I don't see a whole lot of difference between what she wants to do and what the Downtown Partnership and the Parks Department is looking at on this one. So that's my 2 cents on that one.
Ms. Selman, did you?
I just wanted to respond. There was a meeting the other night with the Downtown Citizens Advisory Committee with the people who want to develop a cafe at Herman Massey Park. And there have been ongoing discussions, and the administration has met with them as well. So it's not accurate to say that the city is in any way rejecting it or trying to stymie it. The city is, in fact, working with them now, and we will be coming back to you with a report at your CRA meeting on that park, the Herman Massey Park, on December 14th.
I won't disagree with you because I wasn't privy to that meeting a week ago, but I'd say my statement was pretty accurate up until a week ago. But anyway, that's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Okay. I'll just put in my 2 cents. I mean, I spoke to Mr. Frago, who's here, about it in the Tampa Bay Times. I echo some concerns. Another concern I have is just taking our congregating space downtown and the idea of taking green space, congregating space, and turning it commercial is just something that I'm very suspicious of. Even on a level like this, I am. There's a lot to be looked at in this. There's a lot of different discussions and dialogues to be had, but if we're talking religious, you can call me a doubting Thomas right now, so let's put it that way. So there you go. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we're almost finished with this. We are at number 104 with Ms. Kurt, and then 105, and then we will, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, we didn't do 101 for yours.
Oh, I'm sorry, and I should have said that in the beginning, and Mr. Shelby reminded me. I had a very busy week in my law practice this week, and I couldn't get to that, so I'm going to be continuing that another week. So thank you. Thank you for that, Councilman Carlson. 104, Ms. Kurt.
Thank you, Council. Rebecca Kurt, Assistant City Attorney. I am here on item 104, which was a request to prepare an ordinance notifying citizens of demolitions within the city of Tampa. I was not here when the original motion was made, so I did go back and watch the videotape, and I'm sure you all recall that this was, the genesis of this was a citizen had come down and had complaints about a demolition to which they had no notice of, and and that there were also reports that there were dust and debris, and that there were probably code violations going on with that demolition. I believe Councilman Goods also testified that he was out there and verified that, and had some issues trying to figure out how to bring that into enforcement. There was an initial report, and the follow-up from that report was a request to create an ordinance notifying citizens of the demolition. So in doing my research on this, I started with the Florida Building Code. In the Florida Building Code, the state has determined that they want a uniform state building code that covers the area of demolitions. The state has allowed for local government amendments to it, but it's a very conscribed process. And there are certain things that have to happen before you can do an amendment regarding demolitions. And one of them is that there has to be an interlocal agreement that creates a review board for any of these amendments, and we don't have that in place currently. It is certainly something to follow up on with the county to see if they would be willing to enter into an interlocal to get this compliance board review established. After that, there has to be a fiscal impact analysis of each amendment that would go forward if it's a technical amendment. And then to follow up with that, I just would want council to be aware that any amendment that you did put forward, if we got through those steps, would only be in effect for the term of the Florida Building Code, which is 3 years, and then the amendment, and then it goes up to the state. They either adopt it statewide or they reject it, in which case every 3 years you would have to readopt it. So right now I'm not in a position where I can bring something to you, but I will follow up with the county about creating that for this and any other future ones, but I'm not in a position at this time to present an ordinance.
Councilman Dingfelder, sir.
Unless Mr. Goods wants to go first. Appreciate your research. I don't question it at all. You're always very thorough. My question, though, is right now, obviously, you have to, if you're going to demolish anything, you have to go down and pull a city permit.
Correct.
I don't know if that's pursuant to state statute or pursuant to city code or both. But I guess on a very simplified basis, if we extrapolated that process, which I know already exists, you have to go get a permit, and we said, and by the way, you would need to post that on the front of the property as sort of a friendly little amendment or addition to the current requirement. I wonder if that would trigger the statute that you referenced or the building code. You know, obviously that other process sounds very complicated and cumbersome in terms of interlocal agreements and everything else.
Councilman, I did consider that, and that is pretty much what I was proposing to bring back to you when I started with this, because certainly you can understand how helpful it would be when there's a demolition going on next to you and people aren't aware of it to have at least a phone number of who to contact. But that is exactly the sort of uniformity that the state expects across the state. And that is exactly the sort of thing that would trigger this. There are certain amendments that don't have to go through this process, but they only deal with enforcement. So unfortunately, I did look to see what avenues we could take without having to go through this, and I'm very confident that this is not one of them.
Now, I know I'm probably going to get some staff pushback on this next idea, which is related, but perhaps if it's something we're real serious about, perhaps we could go out and post that permit and not make it an obligation of the demolisher if we felt it was that important. I don't know why that would trigger anything, because we wouldn't be asking the applicant to do anything.
I don't believe that in itself would trigger the Florida Building Code analysis. That being said, it is something that would need to be done by the administration and an analysis done before that happened. But
okay,
thank you, Councilman Goods.
Well, thank you, Ms. Kirk, for your work. I always say, don't say what we can do, look at what we can do. And if something that we can do, I want to go forward to see what we can do to put something, because it was a concern. And that wasn't the only house I witnessed. I was in a couple houses being done that way, and I just think the public needs to be aware that something's going on, especially when you have child care centers around these facilities, and this dust, the kids are out playing, kids have asthma, have all kind of allergies, and the stench for some of these homes, a lot of them are old, abandoned lead paint houses, a lot of them have a lot of drug paraphernalia that's all underneath the house and inside the place, and feces and everything. So I just think we need to see what we can do. I hate to put a lot of work on you, but it's something that the community came and asked me, and I don't want to be a person to say, well, we just won't do nothing. It's too much work for us. So if you can look into it further, I appreciate that.
Councilman, one of the things that I was looking for, because I don't like coming to you all and saying that there isn't something that you can do, is I would like to take the opportunity to work with staff and to provide all of your offices with the contact information if something like this does come, because I do understand that there was some confusion about who to contact in those situations, and I'll take that upon myself personally to provide that to y'all's office.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
No, just procedurally, if we're done with that. Item 66, Mr. Snelling was here. I think Ms. McCleary was here also, had been pulled. I know it's part of the regular agenda that's now pulled, but as long as they're
66
here.
was 66 or 56?
I thought it was.
You mean the EDC?
No, it was the CDBG. 66.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. Okay, my apologies. Yeah, if you
It
want
was
to.
it was a friendly poll because I just thought
Okay.
it would be important for them. We spend millions of dollars through CDBG money, and I thought it was important for them to give a couple of minutes update on CDBG and how that
Okay,
works.
very quickly, please.
Well,
Go ahead.
they're here, and we don't
They're
like to
waiting.
waste their time. Yeah.
I agree. Go ahead.
Good morning, Vanessa McCleary, Housing and Community Development Manager, City of Tampa. Item 66 is the Catholic Charities Agreement, and it is part of the annual action plan.
And Vanessa, just for clarification, I just said 66, but this would be related to all the.
Right.
There's like, what do you have, like 8 of them on there, on the agenda?
So every year we do an annual action plan for HUD. That is required as part of our consolidated plan. So there's a consolidated plan that covers 5 years. Every year you do an annual action plan, and that is for our allocation. So as part of the action plan process, it actually starts in March. We have a number of public hearings. We have a first public hearing to let people know that we're going to start the process. We have technical assistance workshops to let nonprofits know how they can go about applying for the funds. Once we get all of those submissions in, we do a recommendation to the mayor. We then pull together the action plan that outlines how the money will be spent. That is presented to the city council in a public hearing that happened on May 23rd. It opens a 30-day comment period that closed on June 23rd. And then after the comment period, we submit to HUD. There is a lag between when the action plan is done and when the agreements come out. So for some of the activities, there is actually a 3-year agreement, but we didn't receive our notice from HUD until October 23rd. And that's when we know that the monies are available, we get our grant agreements, and then we can move forward with the agreements with the agencies for the funds that were allocated in the annual action plan. So this actually happened, was approved back in July, went to HUD August. We just got our letter, and so that's why you have about 10 different items, agreements on the agenda today. There are a number of them that are not on the agenda, and that's because those are 3-year agreements, and so they're covered in that way.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Just as a follow-up, Ms. McCleary, thanks for bringing that. The reason I asked to pull this is not because I'm opposed to it. Actually, to the contrary, I'm tremendously in favor of it. I wanted to bring this up because many folks in the community often ask us, what are you doing? What are you doing for less advantaged parts of town and less advantaged people, disadvantaged people in our community? And I think this is an important one that sort of slips by without a whole lot of notice on the consent agenda. Not your fault. But in this case, it's $3 million, I think is the total CDBG Community Development Block Grant contribution from the...
Actually...
Well, I just saw it on your letter, on that letter you had.
Sorry, $3 million that we received this year, yes.
Total allocation of $3 million.
We have other funds that were from previous years that were included in the action plan. total of the action plan was about 15 million. And I don't have that with me, the breakdown as to what was out of CDBG, but
Right.
yes.
But and as I look through these plans, I think they're really, there's some good things going on with the blind, with helping the blind, helping people, remind me of just a few.
So we had
of them.
housing counseling to help people with stabilizing their housing needs, whether that's rental or home ownership. We had special needs assistance, so we do work with Lighthouse for the Blind. We have a number of programs for homeless individuals, people with HIV and AIDS. There is a large variety of funding, and that's why we had, because people are not coming out to the public hearings and not aware, that's why we had the Community Resource Fair on the 26th, where we brought all of those agencies into one space. We will do that again in January. We're just trying to nail down a location. So the end of January, beginning of February, we'll do another one. We're going to do them quarterly just so that we can bring these services to the community and make them aware of the programs that we're funding.
And that's exactly the information I wanted to get out to the community. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Councilman Booz, really quick, because we got to move forward.
Yes, sir, I know. Two things. I had asked Mr. Stanley a while ago about the community block grants and who's getting this money or where it's distributed to. I'm glad I have some idea now. But I want you to take a look at, in the future, rehab. I think a lot more money needs to be put in rehab in these communities. I think that would be a key to building and keeping the assets in the community and keeping the people in the community. As I travel the country, I see people have these new ideas of having handyman trailers to where the outside contract and have people go down communities and actually fix roofs, do painting. And I don't know, it would be certain guidelines, or maybe we can have our own guidelines versus any federal guidelines, but looking at putting more money into rehabbing these blighted communities. People don't have money. You have an older person who can't get a loan or can't fix their place up because they don't have fixed income. That's why I like to see some of that money be going to heavily to look at rehab. And also, while I have you here, a great job on what your people did for us in this council, but I also like to have a report of the pros and cons on the event so council can know the future when some of the other councilmen want to put on those housing seminars.
Okay. And Councilman, just to make you aware, we do put quite a bit of money into owner-occupied rehab. $2 million is actually going in this year. We did $2 million last year. We didn't use all of the funding. And I'm happy to take more, but I need a resource as to where to get it from, as well as the community to come out and utilize the program that is available.
What's taking so long? I know you have a list. What's taking so long for some of these folks who've been approved to get some rehab done? Some people are saying they still haven't. What's the deal with that?
So I will accept that from our office, we were understaffed for quite a long time. We have recently been staffed up, thank you to the council and to the administration for that. And all of those rehabs are starting to move. We're hoping to have them all completed, the majority completed by December, and all of them completed by March that are in the hopper right now.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. And now, before we move to our last item, 93, 94, 95, does anyone have any questions on those? Because those are under staff reports. I just want to make sure, because I think we have staff here waiting, 93, 94, 95. Let me know, please, because I would like to move to public comment, and I just want to make sure.
No, we didn't do one.
No, that's the last one, before we go to the 105. Anybody have any comments or questions for staff for 93, 94, 95?
Yes.
Okay, Councilman, which one, sir?
94.
Okay, let's hurry up and do 94. Who's here for 94?
And 95.
And 95.
They're related.
Okay. And we'll get to public comment within 7 minutes. Or else your pizza's free.
Good morning, Council. Mark Wolfoff, Department of Solid Waste, Environmental Program Management. So before you today, you have item for McKay Bay Transfer Station. Current transfer station that we have at McKay Bay is undersized. I think when I initially started doing research on this project, realized it was dedicated in, I believe, 1983, and was Mayor Martinez, and our population was probably around 250,000. Since then, obviously, Tampa has expanded quite exponentially, and we're approaching 500,000. So now we have a transfer station that is undersized to serve our population. So we've been working well with the other departments, contract admin, our administrative team, to come up with the correct design and a facility that will be able to accommodate our needs. So here to answer any questions you may have regarding that.
Councilman Dingfelder, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Woolfolk. Thanks for the good work that you and your folks do with solid waste every day of the week. As somebody who uses the transfer station and the city dump out there with my truck periodically, I appreciate the fact we're doing a new one, and we need it badly. So I was glad to see these two items on the agenda. What I didn't get a chance to do this week that I usually do is call Greg Hart and ask him about minority vendors opportunities on this. This is a big one. It's $35 million for item 94, and the other one I think was like $9 million.
Correct.
But specifically in regard to us doing a GMP, guaranteed maximum price agreement with, I don't know if I can pronounce it, Kokolakis.
Yes.
Contracting. Do we have a goal set for them already pre-established in terms of minority vendors?
Yes, that goal has been set. It was pre-established and it has been met. This particular contractor that we'll be working with is also doing a similar project for the city of Clearwater, and they should be nearing completion. So
what is the goal? I couldn't find it on quick review in the contract. Do you know what the goal is?
Right, I would have to follow back up with you on that. I remember we set the goals. I just don't have the details pop into my mind at the time.
So on another contract that I did talk to Mr. Hart about in today's agenda, he talked about 14%. Do you have any idea if it's around that number?
I'd rather go back and firm that number, confirm the right number for you before I sit up here and say, yeah, that sounds familiar. But I can assure you that was a major crossroads that we had to get over prior to getting to this point.
Okay, but since it's a big ticket item, Mr. Chairman, I'll just ask that we not vote on that yet, and Mr. Woolfolk, I'm sure, can call Greg Hart or text him, get that information.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And we'd vote at we'd vote at the end, so there will be time.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And then our last item, 105. And let's do.
Oh, there's Greg. I didn't see you there, Greg.
I was hiding. Good morning, Council. Gregory Hart.
Can you answer that other question before you start on this one?
No, sir, not at this moment. I'd have to pull the file in the records.
Thank
you. Again, Gregory Hart, City of Tampa Equal Business Opportunity Manager. This morning, I'm here to bring you greetings on behalf of Ms. B.J. Waymer, the NFL event executive, and Ms. LaKendria Robinson, our local director of Business Connect and Community Outreach for our NFL host committee. In addition, there was a press conference held Monday, the 4th, at Raymond James Stadium to kick off the Super Bowl 55 Supplier Diversity Program. And it is titled Business Connect, formerly known as Emerging Business Program. The previous Super Bowl held here in Tampa. About Business Connect, let me just briefly and quickly share with you.
It's upside down.
Oops.
Mr. Hart, we couldn't get a representative from the committee here today? I thought we asked for someone from the committee.
Yes, we did. Both are unavailable. I did have a one-on-one briefing with both of them. Ms. Waymer had to return, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday morning, to the NFL executive offices, and our local director, LaKendria, I believe is in St. Pete this morning, doing some presentation.
I like in the future that they come before this council so this council can know who these people are and understand what's going on. That was the reason for that. So we'll go with the presentation today, but I do want them to come before this council so this council can know who these people are, what they're representing, and get familiar with the program of the bowl.
Sure thing, and I'll communicate that as well.
And about how long is your presentation?
60 seconds, a minute.
Oh,
I'll
okay.
cut
Go
it
for
really
it.
brief, okay? Again, about Business Connect, just quickly, it's to connect local diverse businesses to contract opportunities for Super Bowl 55. All contracts related to Business Connect are special event production contracts to prepare local diverse businesses for contracts by having them participate in a series of business development workshops. These workshops will range from preparing a high-quality capability statement, understanding the RFP process, and leveraging the Business Connect experience to grow in our local market. This effort's going to provide networking opportunities for our local businesses to connect with each member of the NFL contracting component. With that, Business Connect will select a maximum of 300 businesses to participate in the Business Connect program. The Business Connect does not guarantee contracts. Regardless of whether a business is awarded a contract or not, they will be guaranteed full access to the Business Connect benefits, including business development programming and networking opportunities. That being said, on Tuesday, November the 12th, we're going to be kicking off, along with our NFL partners at the Jewish Community Center, an event, workshop, and introduction. And that is what you are looking at now on the overhead. With that said, I will conclude by letting you know that the kickoff is underway. It's a year in advance. Super Bowl 55 will be held in 2021. So the NFL did learn from previous efforts that the earlier the better. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Anyone? Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate it. Okay, and now we have the next item is the EDC Contract 56. I'm going to take that after public comment because I think that's going to take a little bit longer. And so now we're going to move forward to public comment. So if you're here to publicly comment on any item on the agenda or otherwise, please come forward. 3 minutes a person. And again, I apologize to everybody for the delay. We had a very robust agenda, and we try to move it along as rapidly as possible. So please accept our, and my, as the chair, sincere apologies for the time waiting. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, we thank God for this here moment because y'all seem like y'all want to black us out. But we thank God for we have an opportunity to come up and speak to you. And I noticed I didn't see no woman up there. I'd sure like for Bernie Coney to sit up there in your place. And I'm being honest with you, that way we can have a true representative of black people. In God we trust and love always. Paradise Missionary Baptist Church, in cooperation, Pastor Frank Williams Sr. and family, 1112 East Scott Street. He that believeth on the Son has everlasting life, and he that believeth not in the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of God shall abide on him. God is angry with the wicked. That's the book of Romans 8:28 and 35 to 39. You know, we have a lot of hatred going on in the United States of America, and it seems like you all hate black folks regardless of what they stand for. And I had talked with Leonard. I left a phone number for you to call me, but you never returned my call. But I'd like for you and your counselors, the lawyer counsel, to come down to my church there, and I want to show y'all some evidence of how they mistreating our church. Can y'all do that for me? Okay, call me and give me so I can set up a date.
Mr. Frank, I'll check with my aide about your call, but I remember I set an appointment to come down. I went down to your place, and we missed that connect.
I know we missed that one, but I
will reach out to you again, sir, okay?
Yeah, okay, please. Also, I want to make the dedication to this city council here. I'm put it here so everybody can see it. That's the way y'all seem to run this organization, so you need to change the name, the founder of the Ku Klux Klan, because that's the way y'all seem to run it. You don't seem to respect people of color, and you got to understand, we were created by God Almighty, all of us. Nobody's no better than nobody else. Because of the color of your skin, you look at yourself and think you're superior. No, you're not superior. You're only superior when you got Jesus Christ in your life. And I thank God for Jesus Christ. And y'all that thing, each practically trying to eliminate public comments because the idea they want to hear what all the white folks got to say and don't want to hear nothing the black folks got to say. But we're going to get busy. We're going to talk to God if we have to fast and pray. And we're going to make sure that God treat everybody equal. And y'all not going to mistreat God's children under any circumstance.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, please.
I'm leaving this as a donation to y'all. Y'all can put it in a plaque and put it on the wall.
Thank you, sir. Next, please.
Thank you. Let me get out of here.
Hi. I just wanted to talk about the benches in Gaslight Park and the cafe.
In your name, if I may, sir.
Austin Willis.
Thank you, sir.
First of all, just the whole proposal of putting a cafe in the park because like we need to attract more people to it or to that area, or we need to put, we need to develop the area. Like, what does that mean? Like, it seems to me that what the Chamber of Commerce or the business government cooperation whatever, what they mean by development and like improving the area just means extracting more money out of it. Like before we took the benches out, lots of people were already enjoying the park. Like a lot of people would congregate and hang out in the park. Just maybe not like the same kind of people as Mayor Castor would like, you know, maybe just not the right kind of people. But people were already enjoying the park. We don't need to sell stuff and like charge for entry at the park for people to enjoy it. People will already enjoy it if you just put the benches back. And I also just wanted to state the obvious that taking the benches out and for 5 or 6 months now, I think, because they can't be repaired. Well, I sat on those benches like 5 days before they were taken out. They were fine. The benches are totally fine. I sat on those benches every week, once a week or twice a week. Nothing wrong with the benches. It is very suspicious that they were removed when the major sporting event was in town, and I heard lots of houseless people tell me that they had been told by police not to be in Gaslight Park that weekend, the same weekend that the benches were removed. You know, it's clear, it's just plain as day that it's to discourage people from congregating in the park, undesirable people. And yeah, why does it take 6 months to fix a bench? All right, it's not an internal combustion engine or a spaceship or anything. It's a piece of metal that you put your ass on. And I know the Park Student Rec Department have benches. If they don't have extra benches, like what are they doing? It's the Parks Department. They have benches. Okay, it's ridiculous. It's just a lie that they don't have, that they can't put the benches back. That's a straight up lie. That's all.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Next, please.
Good morning. My name is Mike Pettit. I'm also here on that issue. It looked to me like at least 4, if not 5 of you already recognize what a bad idea this concession is. I'm not going to spend too much time on it except to comment that in the paper it was reported, and take it for what it is, that the proposal may or may not include a payment to the city for the space. That's astounding. That's astounding. But the reality is we don't need more places to eat downtown. There's plenty of places to eat downtown. I have a lot of ideas about what you could do to that park to make it more amenable, but I'm not an expert in park design. You have a staff for that. So I'm going to take a minute to talk about the homelessness problem you have here. What are we doing about it? It's unclear to me that we're doing anything about it. And I understand it's not just a city problem. It's also a county problem and a state problem. We live in a state that has a Sadowski Fund, which has been rated to the tune of $2 billion for affordable housing, okay, by our state legislature, who somebody up there today characterized as more like a Mississippi state legislature. Totally agree. It may be worse than that. But this city has, according to my research, and I don't pretend to be a government finance expert, approximately 13 sources of financing potential, including bonding. There are things you can do to work on developing not just affordable housing, but housing for people who just don't cut it sometimes in this society. for whatever reason, terrible luck, terrible health, addiction, mental challenges. Those people need to be helped also. And you have 22 city attorneys here by my count, maybe one or two off. Put one of them on this. Put one of them on this. Let them do some work, tell you what financing opportunities you have to help fix this problem. Have a joint meeting with Hillsborough County. Talk to them about how we can do this county-wide. It's not going to happen at the state legislature level. Not in my lifetime, from what I can tell. But it really needs to be something that's fixed. And I heard some people up here earlier speaking about a project that actually sounded pretty interesting to me, the Safe and Sound Hillsborough project. And they talked about we want to fight the causes of crime. People need a place to be, and when they don't have a place to be and they're homeless, that can be a cause of crime. Petty crime most of the time, but still a cause of crime. We need to fix the problem. It's more than benches.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, please.
Good morning. Geraldine Rogers Toombs. Thank you for this opportunity to express my concerns about placing roundabouts on 34th Street in East Tampa. After significant research, I discovered that roundabouts have become a national trend in lieu of traffic signals, and they have favorable reviews for reducing serious traffic accidents. The City of Tampa website identifies 25 roundabouts in Tampa. However, the roundabouts are a relatively newer design in Tampa and a major change from traditional driving methods. Public education should accompany the implementation of roundabouts. I commend Mayor Castor for being receptive to the concerns of our communities. Mayor Castor responded to a citizen's question regarding the planned roundabouts for 34th Street while appearing on WTMP radio station. About 2 weeks after her appearance on the show, a public demonstration was conducted at 40th Street and Yukon Avenue to give instructions on how to maneuver through roundabouts. And the appropriate traffic signals, and the appropriate traffic signs were eventually installed. Still, I have concerns about safety of the children in East Tampa when it comes to adding newly proposed roundabouts on 34th Street. In all of my research, I didn't find any roundabouts located in close proximity to an elementary school or two elementary schools. Did the City of Tampa Transportation Department consult with Hillsborough County School District or the city's Parks and Recreation Department? Or were any public hearings held in East Tampa to obtain the community's perspective pertaining to roundabouts being on 34th Street? Two of the proposed changes to 34th Street are in residential areas with elementary schools and parks. Potter Elementary School, Head Start Program, East Tampa Academy Charter School, Fair Oaks Park, and the NFL Yet Center are all in close proximity to the proposed roundabout sites. And the NFL Yet Center will be directly next to one, meaning within a few hundred feet from proposed roundabouts. It's also alarming that the roundabouts proposed for 34th Street and Columbus Drive is directly next to Christ United Methodist Church. I'm gonna have to skip some of that. We must ask ourselves, are we endangering the health and safety of pedestrians, bicyclists, and handicapped children, individuals with the newly proposed roundabout locations? Even children understand traffic lights. Red means stop and green means go. May I please complete what I said? I was here 2 weeks ago.
Go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead.
Even children understand traffic lights. Red means stop and green means go. Will new pedestrian crosswalk signals and stoplights be installed? If so, is it feasible to have roundabouts where traffic lights will still be required? Please reconsider the installation of roundabouts on 34th Street for the aforementioned reasons. I pray sound decisions will be made to ensure the safety of all parties commuting on 34th Street. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
We appreciate your thoughts and words, ma'am. Next, please.
Good morning.
My name is Carol Ransom. I'm here this morning to talk about several of the issues I see listed on your agenda today. One of them I had a really great question. It's somewhere in this agenda where you stated that there will be a quit claim deed for properties. One was valued at $1,000. The other was stated, for $245. So I would like to know how to get my name on the list so that the city of Tampa can quit claim some property. Real property is what is stated here, and I don't know if I have this correct, but I did read it, how I get my name on the list for those properties. The next issue I wanted to discuss was also an item that was listed on your agenda today, and that was from the lovely report we got from Mr. Gregory Hart, and this was regarding the proposal for the Super Bowl 55 coming here to the city of Tampa. You know, a few years ago, we did have another Super Bowl, and I do know of numerous construction companies that participated in the shenanigans that went on that year. They paraded us up and down. We signed all types of attendance sheets. We went to workshop after workshop and did not get anything. The key to it all is called unbundling. If they don't set aside work in smaller bundles so that some of the smaller companies here that exist in the city of Tampa, then we won't be able to participate in those projects. One of the criteria or stipulations was that you had to be able to conduct stadium work. You had to participate in work at a stadium prior to the Super Bowl. Well, if you didn't get work the last Super Bowl, when did you get work at the stadium? And so that gave us the opportunity to automatically not be successful. The same thing happened when you have the gentleman here, the new work that's being done over at the for waste management. If you unbundle the project, you can get more participation. What happens is, and this is across every government, we have cracks in our systems. Whether it's the homeless problem, whether it's the benches downtown, and companies and people, human beings are falling through the cracks. We got to figure out what the crack is and how to fix it. You got these programs, and I heard you say, Mr. Gould, about rehabbing more homes. Problem in my community, we don't own the home because mom and them didn't have a will. They didn't have a will, so the house doesn't belong to anybody, but somebody, usually the matriarch, lives in that house, and because her name is not on anything, she couldn't qualify if you bore the money down and poured it on her. Simple fix. 22 city attorneys, is that what the gentleman said? Figure it out how to help us fix our problems. We are falling between the cracks, and it's going to get ugly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate it. Next, please.
Good morning. My name is Ed Cronin. I'm here to speak on item number 102, the benches down in Gaslight Park. And I attended church, Hyde Park United Methodist Church, that throughout the course of the year provides somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 breakfast meals to unhoused neighbors in our city. And through this experience, as well as through the Bible study that follows, I hear some pretty challenging questions. Things like, well, how come you folks go to church on Sunday morning to worship a Savior who was functionally homeless, and the rest of the week you forget about him? Or, for worshiping a homeless Savior, you don't have any place for them to sleep at night. And the city made a promise. It was published in the newspaper, and I know not everything is published in the newspaper is necessarily accurate, but there was published in the newspaper earlier this year where the city spokesperson promised to put those benches back. They promised. The city spokesperson, who's still the city spokesperson today, is now saying something completely different. Is now saying, well, we know there was that promise, but now we want to have a cafe. And I got here early. I got about an hour early. I walked around, and I saw all kinds of cafes, many of which have outdoor spaces, so you'd be competing with existing businesses by doing that. I also talked to some folks who don't have homes and asked them what they thought. And you know what? They're pretty much used to having promises broken. This is a promise that you guys made as the city. The city made this promise to put these benches back. This is a moral obligation. Our initial speaker today who gave the invocation called on us to heed the Holy Spirit. And in the words of Scripture, we are told to love God above all else and love our neighbors as ourselves. These are our neighbors. whether they dress up in shirts and ties and have a car and a home or not. These are our neighbors. Honor your commitments to your neighbors. Doesn't matter whether you're Judeo-Christian, Muslim, or non-religious group like Food Not Bombs, who helps folks out. This is an American promise we've made to our neighbors. Please honor that, and don't allow this cafe to go in there, taking away one of the few public spaces where folks can hang out. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
My name is Jimmy Dunson, and I am going to talk about the benches in Gaslight Park as well. First, I wanted to ask for your understanding for the strong emotions that this subject invokes. Many of us have become close friends with people experiencing homelessness in downtown Tampa. We share meals together. We tend people's wounds. Just recently, in the past month, 3 of our friends on the streets have died. So it's something that touches us very deeply and closely. So I want to make sure that any amenities that are in the park, for everybody, including people experiencing homelessness, that a cafe or whatever other additions to the park are not done at the expense of further marginalizing and forcing people out, people who have already been marginalized and pushed to the edges already more than their fair share. And it's not just the benches; it's trash cans too. For some reason, the city decided to remove the trash cans from the park as well. So during our food shares, we bring trash bags, to collect all the garbage and bring it with us, when we leave. So we really encourage you to, put the needs of people experiencing homelessness at the forethought of, your policy. And if you can, liaison with the mayor's office in the city to get the benches and trash cans back, that would be great, and it would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, Connie Burton. I would just say first, do not allow this council to be set up that we have a queen, the lords, and you think we're your subjects. It's not going to work that way. We want to have mutual respect for you, and we want you to have mutual respect of our time. Number one, there are several things on the agenda I want to talk about. The marijuana dispensary, some of you was not here in 2017, but some were. And as a result of a non-caring community, now we have the dispensary, we got internet cafes, and I'm sure more to come. You know why? Because that is the dumping hub for things that will not show up on Bay Shore. I want to see how many dispensaries come out of there. And I would hope that some of you would have enough courage to say that the community that has suffered the brunt of so many arrests from marijuana, that even if it's not within your lane, you speak out to see how we can expunge some of those charges the way we see so many throughout the country are doing. Don't let Florida and Tampa be the last of the last. Other thing on the agenda item, number 54 and number 55, as to how lots become affordable for $245, $8,000, when in our community, when we in East Tampa, we are trying to get lots, then we see the CRA becomes in control of the lots, then the lots then is raffled off to high bidders. The community still do not have a say in what we want to see happen to our community. You know that. We're going to keep on drumming that down too, as well as all of the monies that's coming through this community. I could tell you straight up, just like Mr. Hart and the other one could not talk about what minority participation gonna be, it's probably at 0.1%. They're too embarrassed to say that. Because most people in the African community, where the economy and jobs may be at the national pace, in our community, it is about 50% of unemployment. In terms of entrepreneurship, the tradition in our community has been to go to school so you can get a good job, not to go to school to become an entrepreneur. So when all of this money is flying around in this city, $1 million with Kimmons, how many quadrillions with Swift Mud, ask the question, how many job opportunities are being afforded the least fortunate in our community. And the issue of homelessness is something that this council, that all of you all look well groomed this morning, probably didn't have to do it out your car, probably didn't have to go to McDonald's and brush your teeth, but it is happening in our community. And I would hope some of you would have enough courage before your next election cycle to say that you're going to take on this issue of eradicating homelessness in our community, one community at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate it. Next, please.
Good morning, Council. Bishop Michelle B. Patty. Thank you, Connie, for leading right into what I needed to say. First of all, the council need to understand you work for the voters. The voters, we voted you in, we can vote you out. Saying that next, the staff work for you. So you all should revisit when you will allow the public comments to come forward to you. I want to thank those of you that thought it not robbery to think about the homeless. We need to be proactive. Your own workers, your own staff cannot go to this park and have a bagged lunch because there's nowhere to sit at. So if you're having people, the cafe is going to be for paying customers only. Also, the zoning for the marijuana distributed. Councilman, I'm glad you pointed out that you are an attorney, because there should be some loophole where you can take the city back from the state. This is our city. We need to look and find the loopholes as to what we can do. 2021, the Super Bowl, it has already been established. Black folks will not get any work done because you already have a stipulation. They have to have a brick and mortar. Okay, many people work from their home. They don't have these shops. Not saying they're not licensed, not saying they cannot do the job. They can do the job, but we need to have the opportunity. So the bar has already been set high, where we would be left out again, and Tampa would be saying, oh, we reached out to you all. No, you didn't. It's smoke and mirrors. It's not giving people an opportunity to bid or to have some work with this Super Bowl. As a taxpayer, we need to be involved, and we need to have a part of the pie. The young lady spoke about the mayor coming on the talk show. The name of the show is What's Really Happening. I'm one of the hosts along with King Cobra and Jay Johnson. Not only did she come on the show, but that's how we ended up on 40th Street, because the citizens spoke out about the roundabout. We want to thank Councilman Goose for coming out. But what took place, when you work with your citizens, when you listen at your citizens, then changes can come about, because there are some things that has gotten implemented because we came together on that project. So you need to stop leaving out the voices of the people and start listening, because we do have common sense. And back to the benches, my face is on quite a few benches in this town. It does not take months to get a bench replaced, because when mine, something happened to it, I make a phone call. Within days, those benches are put back. So let's stop the smoke and mirrors. Let's stop trying to play on people intelligence, and let it be known that the city of Tampa, we will not be the laughing stock. And the only reason we don't want the benches there, because of the Super Bowl is coming, and you don't want people to see that we're homeless here.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate it. Next, please.
Is Elmo working today?
We can see.
John Mall, 4104 North Lynn Avenue, Tampa, Florida. I've been trying to get mitigation credit for about 3 years, and last council meeting, someone handed me a memorandum, and I'm having on the Elmo here, if I can read it here. If you want to see a property that retains and treats all of the storm water on site, come to my property. I don't know if any of you will take me up on that. Anybody who wants to see this being done, I'm doing it right now. I'm not throwing any storm water to the city street or a ditch. My roof has been there 100 years. Not one drop in those 100 years has ever reached the city property. Yet, when I open up my tax bill, there it sits. It says a non-ad valorem assessment, but it says a tax amount. This is just a tax disguised as a user fee. I'm not using any city pipes. I don't use city water. I don't use city sewer, and I don't use city drainage. So why does it show here that I have to pay? About 30% of my taxes is for a stormwater runoff that doesn't run off my property. It says that in an attempt to expeditiously resolve this matter, the staff is conducting an engineering review of the property. Has anybody seen an engineering review of a property signed by a PE whose license is on the line? I haven't even been contacted as anybody wanting to, a staff member coming to look at my property. You don't need a Cessna Skywagon flying over with LiDAR to show where the water goes, the rainwater that stays on my property. I don't need the full 3 minutes. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, please. And I believe these two ladies will be the last for public comment. Is that okay, Ms. Long? It'll be the, I guess, 3 ladies. Anyone else after Ms. Long, just to make sure? Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Susan Morgan, and I am here today from Grace Point. I would just like to share Florida ranks 3rd in the nation for drug overdoses and death due to death thereof. And we have on average 1,100 people come to a month come to Grace Point that's in a mental health or substance abuse crisis. And about 80 to 90% of those test positive for marijuana. Additionally, we have 1,500 people a week come to our outpatient services right there on our campus to receive outpatient services for mental health and substance abuse. And I think, in speaking to most of you and other folks in the community, most people realize that having a medical marijuana treatment center such closely located to treatment facilities is probably not the most sensitive or best idea. And I understand we're limited here as to the regulations that Tallahassee and the Florida legislature has set forth. But as Councilman Goods mentioned, that perhaps it might be an opportunity for the council to write a letter to the League of Cities and to the Florida legislature. I'm not sure how all of that works. But additionally, the way the regulations are written, it does allow some regulation in the land use. So it might be a way that we can look at, even if we can't do anything about the current situation, going forward. I tried to print a map of the other commercial general sites that are within the city, and unfortunately I wasn't savvy enough to print it in such a way to make it user-friendly here for this presentation. But there does lead that there could be other situations similar to ours that could occur in the future. So I thought maybe we could consider looking at the land use matrix. Now I understand that's not a quick process, it's a little bit lengthy, the overlay districts, but then also in the current ordinance that may be better defining where the processing and distribution sites for medical marijuana are located. Currently it's in commercial general, and I'm not going to take time to read the definition, but it's supposed to be compatible with surrounding uses in residential districts. And I'm not sure if under commercial general, processing and distribution centers, such as the one next door to us that plans to be a statewide distribution center. So when you think about the numbers of trucks and traffic that will go through a neighborhood, if that's the best idea, that it might be better suited for commercial intensive. Now this is out of my wheelhouse. I'm just putting it out as avenues that perhaps we can look at these things. And then also maybe clarifying where not being able to co-locate a dispensary with a processing or a grow facility. I just don't, that is something that we could put into our land use, and I know that the city will probably say in their research that we have to regulate them the same as pharmacies, but most pharmacies are not growing their medication, they're not distributing their medication, so I don't think it would impede them. So thank you so much, and thank you for your willingness to have the workshop
Ms. Zelman?
earlier.
Ms. Zelman, can you chime in on any of that Ms. Long said?
The only thing I would correct is under our code, we're only allowing the processing and cultivation in the industrial general and heavy industrial zoning districts. The dispensaries, again, by state law, we can't have any restrictions more restrictive than we would have for a pharmacy. So they are allowed in commercial zoning districts.
So the way that was zoned in the property next door to us, they are zoned as a medical marijuana treatment center, which allows them to grow, process, distribute, and as a dispensary. It is something that we could consider in our land use matrix, and that definition is, again, I'm just thinking outside the box here, is not being able to co-locate a processing facility and a dispensary. And I'm not saying even that the marijuana industry folks want to do that, but if you're zoned to do that, and let's fast forward 5 years from now, we can't.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate it. Next, please.
Good morning. I'm Ellen Snelling, and I'm a parent. Have a daughter in recovery, and also I'm with the Hillsborough County Anti-Drug Alliance and Tampa Alcohol Coalition. And I'm here today to talk to you about the staff report on the medical marijuana. And I've done my own research, and there are things that can be done. Now, I'm not saying the city will want to move forward with any of them, but I just want to make sure it's clear that we can do something. In fact, two other cities, the other two cities within Hillsborough County are doing something, and they both have banned medical marijuana dispensaries. So that is very clear under our state statute that cities can do that. So you may be thinking, well, we already have medical marijuana, so we can't do that anymore. Well, then you can look at this. I gave you copies of 4 different bans, and one of them is Lake Worth. And Lake Worth is a really nice city over on the East Coast. They had 2 dispensaries, and the city council decided that was enough. And they are very upset with the state. As you all mentioned, the state is tying the hands of cities to be able to zone the way they want. So they decided they're going to be working at the state level to try to change that, but in the meantime, they're banning. So something that could be done, if it was the will of the city council, is to grandfather in I believe there's 8 or 9 dispensaries already within the city, and then say no new dispensaries. In other words, banning the new dispensaries. And I gave you a copy of that to see. So one other thing I just wanted to mention is that there's a new crisis, and it's called the vape lung injury crisis. And in Florida, as of this week, there's been 87 cases and 1 death. And this is caused by vaping marijuana. That's the most common cause. And some of it's black market, but some of it comes from dispensaries. So it's just something to keep in mind. Do we want to keep inviting more and more of these dispensaries into our city, or is 8 enough? And in my opinion, I think 8 is enough until the state gives us more leeway to zone. Because another situation can happen like this. They can go right next to any neighborhood. They can go within 10 feet of a neighborhood, for that matter. They can go anywhere a pharmacy can go right now. So the only way to control them is to ban them. A couple of other cities have done something where they're putting pharmacies, all new pharmacies and all new dispensaries in the same zoning. And they're saying, moving forward, we will have zoning for the new pharmacies and new dispensaries. That's the only other thing that can be done at this point, by the way, where hands are tied. So just want to appreciate everything that you all have done and showed interest in the community. But I don't like to give up, and I'm not going to give up, and I'm hoping that the city will do something moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Goods.
Ms. Zellman again? Under our current ordinance, we don't have a number specific on that, reference to these dispensaries, correct?
Right, and so if you recall back when we talked about this in September, I did explain, it's correct that under the statute, the city had the option to ban dispensaries. And I would note that the facility in East Tampa that's kind of part of the genesis of this conversation is also a cultivating and processing facility, which we cannot ban. That totally preempted by the state. The state did allow cities and counties to, if they chose to, ban dispensaries outright. And as I talked about in my memo, because I went back and read the transcripts, in 2017, this council had a very heated discussion, debate as to whether to do that. And the thought was that, based on my read of the transcripts, I wasn't here, the council was very sensitive to the needs of certain people to use medical marijuana for some very tragic illnesses, and decided not to ban dispensaries, to allow them. Once the city decides to allow them, then again, the state really limits you in what you can do. You can't limit the number of them. You can't have restrictions more than you would have for a pharmacy. I would also note, just in response to one of the comments, there are in fact several dispensaries in, for example, the South Tampa area. Most of them tend to be in very nondescript strip shopping centers. You wouldn't even know you're driving past them as you drive past. So just so people are aware, the dispensaries, there are in fact a number of dispensaries in South Tampa.
But could you grandfather what's existing now and not allow any more new?
So we had talked about that back in September. We have a concern about trying to put that horse back in the barn at this point. There would be a lot of legal ramifications, rendering the existing facilities non-conforming. We have people with investment-backed expectations who have bought property or planning to open dispensaries, have not done so. If we suddenly, after the fact, try to do a ban, we think we would be faced with significant legal exposure, and that's why we recommended that the council not do that. And again, it wouldn't, for example, with the facility in East Tampa, which is already approved, it also is a cultivating and processing facility, which we cannot ban. But again, we strongly recommend that the council not go back and try to ban them now after 2 years of them being allowed in the city of Tampa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ellman. Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Susan Long, I'm here to, mainly, I want to make a very brief comment about, trying to figure out which number it was. 100. My neighborhood, Seminole Heights, is not concerned about the dispensaries. We're very concerned about the production facility going in on the edge of our neighborhood and the impact it will have on the quality of life for us who will be smelling it and having the dust, et cetera. So that's a very major concern. I did listen to the testimony of the legal, and they said we can't do anything about it, which is very frustrating. Anybody who wants to go to Tallahassee with me and fight the fact that they're taking away all our rights, I'll be more than willing to go. The other thing is I want to talk about the Angus Goss pool. I listened to Mr. Baird say that a pool covers a lot of things, a little kiddie pool, a splash pool, this pool. We don't want a splash pool. We got splash pools. We got them at Giddens Park. We want a pool where you can get in and swim. You can teach kids to swim, where the swim team across the street doesn't have to have kids drive kids all the way across Tampa to do their practices because there's no pool in their own neighborhood. We want a real swimming pool, not a splash pad or a little wading pool for the 2-year-olds. This is adults want to do water aerobics. They want to swim laps, and we would like a pool that would do that. So you'll have us screaming and yelling if you're talking about a pool that is only for little kids that can barely walk. The other thing is, on the bricks, I live in a street where all the bricks were covered in asphalt. Now, over time, some of the bricks have died, so we have just a puddle of asphalt there. But in front of my house, where the oak trees have kind of torn up the street a little bit, we have real bricks under there. I would love to see them come back. From what I heard today, that's never going to happen. I find that very frustrating. We have a major speed issue on our road. They come off Nebraska and they go 90 miles an hour to get wherever they're going. Or they come racing up, literally drag racing up to Nebraska and wonder why we're upset with the speeding. I would like to see some way we could get at least some improvement on that, bricks or some other traffic calming. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate it. Okay, next. Consent agenda. Okay, are there any requests by the public for reconsideration of legislative matters? There being none, we move forward to the consent agenda. We will move all items, save for 56, I believe, which we'll deal with after. Councilman Dingfelder, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. In response to a community comment, I'd like to very quickly pull 54 and 55 as well. 54 is not going to be a big deal. 55, I'm waiting to get a little more information from staff, which we can wait on for a second.
One second. We're going to pull, you're seeking to pull 54 and 55. I don't know if we can get staff here. What would
No,
we need?
well, we have.
You just want discussion, or?
We have some staff here already.
Okay, then how about this? We'll separate then Councilman 54, 55, and 56, and we'll move the rest. But let's go ahead and do that if I may. Public Safety Committee, Councilman Citro.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I move items number 6 through 20 if Councilman Dingfelder and Councilman Carlson are okay with item 20. Then I'll include item 20. So that's 6 through 21.
We have a motion by Councilman Citro, a second by Councilman Escapo. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Councilman Dingfelder for Parks and Recreation, sir.
All right, as the Vice Chair of Parks and Recreation, I'll move items 22 through 26.
Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion by Councilman Dingfelder, a second by Councilman Escaco. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next, Councilman Dingfelder, Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move items 27 through 42 with a substitute resolution 30.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Dingfelder, a second by Councilman Escaco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Councilman Miranda, the Finance Committee, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. We'll have 42, 43, or 46, I believe it was.
Second.
49.
49. We have a motion by Councilman Miranda, a second, I think, by Councilman Escaco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And congratulations to Demetrius Simmons on 47. Councilman Carlson for Building, Zoning, and Preservation with the 3 items omitted.
Yeah, so I'd like to move items number 50 through 53, and then 57 through 61. And I need to pull number 62. I can explain in a second, and then.
Okay, and let me stop there.
Go ahead a
For
second.
pulling items, please, let's have them pulled the day before.
That's just
That
for
is
a conflict.
I know. Oh, you need to pull it?
Yeah, just.
Okay,
not
I was
to pull,
gonna
just for
say,
vote.
what's going on? Okay, so.
So we do it second, so 50 through 53, 57 through 61, and then 63 through 75.
Okay, so let's do that, and then we'll have the Vice Chair, Councilman Escaco, move for the one that you are not allowed to do so. And who seconds that?
I do.
Yes, sir.
And just, you do have a second, and also, to make sure it's clear in the record that accepting the substitute on number 63, Councilman Dingfelder's message, I want to make sure it's in the record.
Okay, accepting the
Okay.
substitute.
It is. Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Carlson, a second, I think it was by Councilman Escaco.
Miranda.
Oh, Miranda, I apologize. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Councilman Escaco, do you mind moving that item, sir?
Item number 62.
I need to step out.
Before you do, no, before you step out, sir, if you just have a seat, you don't have to step out, because it's only one item. If you can, just announce your intention to abstain and the nature of your conflict and the fact that you're submitting Form 8B. If you can do
Yeah,
that.
I'm gonna submit the form, and my company has a client that's affiliated with this issue, so I need to abstain.
62.
62. Here.
Okay. Do you want to move that, sir? Councilman Escaco, do you want to second that? Councilman
Move
Dingfelder?
item 62.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Escaco, a second by Councilman Dingfelder. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and yes, thank you. And we usually break for lunch. I think that we can get everything in before we break for lunch in terms of, excuse me, the consent agenda.
Yeah, we can do 54, 55 real quick.
Yeah, if you promise to take no more than 2 minutes, go for it.
Okay, in regard to 54, a young lady in the audience spoke very articulately, and she said, why are we giving away property for $245? I pulled the backup on that and specifically wanted to respond because it was a good question. So this is a tiny little piece it's a tiny strip of land, 350 square feet, what they call an uneconomic remainder that somehow or another, probably through eminent domain or whatever, ended up continuing to be in our possession. 350 square feet is 35 by 10. It's not buildable or anything else. So that I just wanted to explain that, and in a second I'll move that I asked staff to look at number 55 because that's $8,000 item for property located at 814 East Palm Avenue. And they said there was a backup on the exhibit, but I couldn't find the exhibit. So what did you find?
Well, I found out from real estate that this also is an uneconomic remainder. It was a piece of property that was purchased to widen Palm Avenue in the 70s, and it's a lot that's 41 by 50 feet. And those are the dimensions of the lot, and it's unbuildable, and they have offered it to sale to the property on the corner.
41 by 50?
Roughly, yes.
In near Ybor City?
Yes.
So that concerns me a little bit. I think it's sort of cheap because sometimes those can become buildable lots if you go through variances and that sort of thing. Did you have something else to add, Jorge?
Yes, Jorge Martin, City Attorney's Office. I actually worked the documentation of this transaction. The city policy on disposition is to offer uneconomic remainders to adjacent landowners, and they can come up with a price. The minimum amount is usually the appraised value at the appraiser's office. In this instance, we have substantially more than the property is appraised for, and the city benefits because now the land that is owned by the same owner is now going to be taxed at a higher ad valorem rate. That's going to bring revenues. That's going to make it more accessible.
I hear what you're saying, but on the flip side is I think if we put this on the open market and perhaps list it for auction, I think we could get a lot more than $8,000.
It's unbuildable.
I know it's unbuildable, and I said that earlier. It's unbuildable in its current zoning form, but 50 what is it? 50 by 40. Okay, I was thinking of 50 by 90. Okay, 50 by 40, never mind. All right, I'm with you. I was thinking of 50 by 90 we could probably work with, but 50 by 40, I agree with you. Okay, Mr. Chairman, with that, if there's no other comments or questions, I'll move 54 and 55.
Second. Thank you, sir. We have a motion by Councilman Dingfelder, a second by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we move to item number 56, and may also have a motion for an extra 30 minutes for us to go to 12:30. Motion by Councilman Maniscalco, second by Councilman Citro. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Mr. Rogero, your long wait is over, sir. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Council. Dennis Rogero, Interim Chief Financial Officer. Of course, this is an agreement before you for 2 years with the EDC, $538,000 in the current fiscal year, and pending funding appropriation in fiscal year 21, $538,000 in that year. We're available to answer any questions. We have representatives from the EDC and I believe other organizations also.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Councilman Carlson.
Yeah, I pulled this just because obviously I want to vote against it. A few quick points I just want to read into the record. Number one, the contract has a 30-day out. Even though it's a 2-year contract, there's a 30-day out, and there's also a 24-hour out for non-performance. So even though it's a 2-year contract, we still have flexibility to come back and ideally renegotiate terms or change the funding structure completely. Number two, as you all have seen from the public speakers and also from the numbers I presented and others, the biggest issue we're facing in Tampa right now is our high poverty rate. We have the second highest poverty rate of any major city in Florida. We also have an affordable housing crisis. We have a terrible problem with affordable housing, and we need to focus all the city resources we can on those two issues. And so in whatever lens we look at the EDC with, I think we have to add that to the criteria that we look at. And we also have to compare it to what could we do with that money. $538,000 compared to some of the other budgets we spend is not that much money, but it could give $105,000 or what is it, more than $105,000 grants to small businesses, small minority-owned businesses. It could give help us pay or subsidize 10 or more affordable homes. And so we need to look at those other issues and put it through that lens. Number three, regionalism is really important, and it came up in the water issue. But I travel the region regularly, from Sarasota, Bradenton to Pinellas to Pasco, and I got flooded with calls in the last few weeks about people being very upset about this name change. There were other organizations that changed their name as well, but we're funding this organization. And as was said in the paper a couple days ago, the people of Tampa don't want controversy. They don't want conflict. And what this did is it, by changing this name without regard to our partners in the region, it caused conflict. I've been flooded with calls. You saw that Mayor Kreisman was concerned. Commissioner Long wrote an op-ed. The head of the Pinellas EDC wrote a letter to the editor. Pasco commissioners have reached out. They're very, very upset about this. We represent the people of Tampa. When we fund something, they are representing the people of Tampa also. The people of Tampa don't want us to have conflict in the region. They want us to have peace. I recommend that we charge them with promoting regionalism, not just in name, but in actual cooperation. And ideally, they would still change their name back. I think this is going to end up being like the USF Merrill Lynch logo that in a year or so with the regular drum beat, I think it will eventually change. I think they ought to apologize to Mayor Kreisman and the partners in the region for how they, in effect, snubbed them. Number 4, transparency. Transparency is critically important if an organization is going to take public dollars. At the very minimum, I think we ought to ask them to list their board members on their website. We need to know who's running the organization that's getting $1 million plus in public money per year. Some of the partners are generically listed, but the names are not listed, and so we don't know who the leaders are and who are making decisions and how to spend the public's money. Also, and I can give you a longer list of this, is just a short list, but one of the things in the last few years in their reporting, they had, I forgot the percentages, but a very high percentage were reported in terms of the average wage, and now in the most recent reports, they're hardly reporting that at all. And so we need to have transparency in the numbers that are being presented, and we need to know who's running them and how they're making decisions. Number 5, accountability. Do any of you think about for a second, what industry would you say Mosaic is in? I'll pass this down. This is from the newspaper today. The Tampa Bay Times today in the subhead calls them a fertilizer company. The EDC calls them community connections and market research. And I had my staff member and an intern go through and look at what the EDC called their companies that they helped, what industry they put them in, and then look at the website of the companies to see what industry they're in, and most of them were wrong. And so in terms of transparency and accountability, we need to have somebody looking over that. And worse, the city council intern, and I'm giving you the very, very short version, but the city council intern looked at the numbers that they reported. There are lots of big numbers that have been reported in the media. They looked at the numbers. The city council intern looked at it, and in 1 hour, a USF student looked at the numbers and found a $7 million error. In 1 hour, asking one question, the staff confirmed that it was an error. So the question is, if they're making errors in the reports to the city and reports to the city council, and that's just one question that we ask, how do we know that the rest of the numbers are accurate? We need to have accountability. We need to have staff look at it. Apparently, staff has another set of information that I was not originally given, but in the reports, the basic reports to the city and city council, the numbers were wrong. And so we need to make sure that we have accountability. The last thing is inclusiveness. I could give you lots of examples of this, from Betty Kasser and others fighting the University Club for inclusiveness to 1987. The Supreme Court said that Rotary clubs had to include women, and they said it was an unfair advantage for men because they were not getting access to inside information that was gathered because the men in Rotary clubs were able to communicate with each other. The same thing in an organization like this. This is an old model from the 80s. Public pays for a private organization that has confidential information that's paid for by the public, and it's shared among people who pay. And so what I would suggest, if they want to be a private organization, that's fine, but if they're going to get public dollars from the city and county, they need to be inclusive. Inclusiveness is very important, and we need to ask them to have events and programming that includes small businesses. Small businesses cannot afford to pay $10,000 or $20,000 or $50,000 to participate in their activities, and so we need to figure out a way to. We heard the public line up here today and say minority-owned businesses and small businesses should have access in lots of ways. If deals are being cut behind closed doors and we're paying for it, that's not fair to the small businesses we're trying to help. So with that, I will be quiet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Carlson. Councilman Goods, then Councilman Dingfelder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I have just a few questions. And I see the EDC is here. So I know Mr. Carlson has a lot of questions, but I myself, I like the chairman of, or the executive director, Mr. Craig Richardson, to come up and tell me about the EDC, tell this board, so we'll get an understanding of where the funding comes from, who's the boss of the whole organization. Give us a little knowledge about the EDCs, if you would.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman, honorable members of council. My name is Craig Richard, President and CEO of the EDC. With me today is our Vice Chairman, Jim Weiss, who's the Market President of Fifth Third, and Dave Bivert, who is Senior Vice President of SPP, and who's also representing James Nozar, the President of SPP, who is our Secretary Treasurer of the organization. The organization is a 501c6 nonprofit organization. We have about a $4 million budget. Approximately $538,000 of that comes from a contract with the City Council and the City of Tampa, and the other $450,000 is with the Hillsborough County. So of the $4 million budget, approximately we match $1 from the city with $6 of private funding for economic development. In regards to the organization and its governance, the chair this year is Marie Chinisi Everett. She is the managing director of DTCC. She regrets that she couldn't be here today. I believe she sent a letter to council to that effect. And then our general counsel is David Weinstein with Greenberg Traurig. And we have a board of directors that is primarily governed by members and investors of the organization. And then 3 years ago, we actually worked to revise our board of our governance structure so that it would allow 10 new at-large positions that could be nominated from any position. So it's an honor to be with you. I'm pleased to be able to partner with you and continue our successful relationship.
So Mr. Carlson talks about the region. So from what you just explained to me, Pinellas, Manatee, Polk, no other entity outside of Hillsborough and the city of Tampa give to your organization.
Correct. There's one caveat to that. We have a program that's called Global Tampa Bay. It's our international trade program. And on that program, we receive funding from J.P. Morgan Chase to implement a trade export program and a foreign direct investment program. Pinellas and Pasco partners with us on that program. They've agreed to provide funding for their expenses to carry out that piece of the program.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Dingfelder.
Yes, sir. Thanks for joining us today. Just a couple of things. I share some of Mr. Carlson's concerns, especially on this mosaic item, which sort of surprises me. The $500,000. I don't know what our contribution or what your contribution was in terms of time and effort, but I guess, what is that, some sort of investment from Mosaic? I don't know. Jan Platt would be rolling over in her grave if she knew that we were, trying to help Mosaic. And as the article indicated in the paper, it doesn't look like the environmental community is still happy with Mosaic, and that's after fighting them for 30 or 40 years. So anyway, I don't want to get lost in the weeds on that one, but that one jumped out at me, Mr. Carlson. I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. However, one of the things I think it's important that we continue to be team players, especially with the county and with the business community. And if I thought that our $500,000 was it, and you were just sort of an outside arm of the city of Tampa, then I guess I would question that too and say, why don't we just bring you in-house? But that's not the case. You get $500,000 from the city of Tampa, you get $500,000 from Hillsborough County, give or take, and then you get another, what'd you say, about $3 million from your private investors. So I think it's important as the government entity that we, at least for now, continue that relationship in the spirit of cooperation and teamwork. Now, with that said, we are sort of revamping and revising our own internal economic development program with the new hire that will happen over the next, I hope, maybe 6 months or so. So we will work with that person, he or she, to make sure that that's consistent with, you know, with the mayor's ideas, with council's ideas, and with the new ED's ideas. So, with all that, Mr. Carlson, I appreciate you bringing this to our attention. Right now, I don't really see an alternative to continuing to be, like I say, a team player with this organization. If we just yank the carpet right now, we don't have a plan, we don't have a person, we don't really have an alternative over this next year. Ms. Dennis, did you indicate that this item would come back next year or the year after?
Oh, pardon.
The appropriation as part of the fiscal year 21 budget will come before this council. This agreement is for 2 years, but you can only approve a budget on a single fiscal year, so the appropriation of $538,000 will come back to you as part of the next budget process.
Mr. Dingfellow.
Councilman Carlson.
I don't know if you were here yet this morning, but there was another issue related to the EDC on the agenda this morning, and that was to talk about the ROI in relationship to the city. And I asked for it to be postponed till, I think, March 6th. But the idea then is that we'll have, as you said, an economic development director who by then hopefully will have a plan, and we can see what the context of this would be within that plan, and also what the return on investment is.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Anyone else? Councilman.
And I appreciate everything I've heard on both sides. You know, you go out, and this started, I am not elected for Tampa Bay. There is no such thing as a governing body or anything. Tampa Bay is a body of water. You don't hear San Francisco Bay or Miami Bay, but now Tampa Bay is the new catchword for everything. Tampa Bay Bucks. Tampa Bay Buccaneers is what it's called. However, you see, I've seen advertising on the street, Buccaneer Plumbing Service, or whatever it was. As long as they don't use Tampa Bay Buccaneers, then they're all right. I guess, I'm not a lawyer. Then you look at Tampa Bay Rays. Tampa Bay is a body of water. Then you hear Tampa Bay Water. What's more confusing than Tampa Bay Water and the city of Tampa Water? You, sir, come January, is going to receive a lot of complaints in your area. On water. Let me tell you, I'll tell you today that in January you will be getting calls from your constituents in North Tampa, anywhere north where that water is going to be going. So what I'm saying is, do I like it? Maybe not. It's got the word Tampa. In fact, I asked the legal department, can we omit from anybody using the word Tampa? And they told me absolutely no. Way before this happened. So what I'm saying is, you can't say the city of Tampa, but you can say Tampa Bay Water. You can say Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You can say anything you want. So it's a situation that, from what I've read, the thousands of jobs have been created, and not all jobs are high-paying jobs. When you build a plant or you build something that comes in, whoever's doing the management, whoever's doing the contracting, whoever's doing the building of it, ain't gonna be somebody from Harvard. It's gonna be a construction company. The Harvard guy or the Harvard girl or whatever it is, if you're going to build a technical school for nursing, they're also not going to clean the building, guarantee you that. That's what I'm looking at, that there's a range, and I don't know where the population comes from and what the salaries are, but I would imagine it's from top to bottom payroll. It's just not one. If everybody would be a standard payroll, guess what it would be? It would be un-American, because everybody here gets paid on what they produce. Not like a communist country, everybody gets $25 a month, no matter who you are. So what I'm saying is that I'm not opposed to Tampa, whatever you want to call yourself. I may not like it, and I say that publicly. But when I give a speech, somebody said Tampa. No. I'm not Tampa Bay anything. I'm the city of Tampa. That's who elected me. Nobody else elected me, but the city of Tampa. And I can even tell you where all that started. It was years ago. But it is what it is, and I have to live with it. In fact, I even asked the water department to change the name. You can ask Brad Baird. I call him, is it possible? Anything is possible. But it's getting hard to represent a city that's growing so quickly, and everybody wants to use the name Tampa for something. In fact, you can go to Brooksville. Is it Brooksville, Hernando, Brooksville, Tampa, Hillsborough, Hernando, something airport, international airport, and it's in Brooksville. You don't have to believe me, go look at it, right there on US 19. It is what it is.
Anyone else? Just for, before we vote on this, for my own, I know we've obviously spoken about this before. You know, I respectfully disagree whenever it comes to the name change. I don't think that's something that I personally support, which is why I voted for Councilman Carlson's motion over there on the letter. But as I've made clear since that time, that was the preface to a larger book that has developed since then, and I respectfully don't see eye to eye on that issue. I think that the name change, though, does send the wrong message. I think it sends the wrong message. But also, if the city of Tampa were to take the draconian step of not funding the EDC, that would also send a wrong message, and a much more powerfully negative message than a mere name change. So that's why I respectfully cannot support it. I appreciate Councilman Carlson's passion on this issue, but I cannot support it. So, and Councilman Carlson, obviously, you will not be moving it.
One more time,
Yes, sir.
and I know I got 2 bites at the apple. I'm not trying to take the whole apple. It used to be Tampa Stadium. Why? It used to be. In fact, I could talk to you about stadiums for 2 months without taking a breath. But I'm just going to cut it real short. $170 billion was the cost. They don't care about the interest. It cost the city of Tampa $250,000 every time there's a game there. No one's saying, stop that. The first $2 million you make off the stadium in non-football event goes where to the owners. God bless them. And after that, it's 50-50. The parking goes to them. The revenues go to them. Everything goes to them. Do they pay ad valorem? You pay ad valorem tax, sir?
Yes, sir.
Stadiums don't pay ad valorem taxes. There's more and more that I can tell you. I don't have time. But if they change the name, here's the entity that's supporting it. In fact, after they built it, the next year they found out, whoa, we got $5 million in ad valorem tax because it was city property. It wasn't in the county yet. We had to make a motion to give the county the land so they could pay zero tax. What a country. So that's what it's all about. It's about money. It ain't about anything else. It's all about taking, you talk about housing, you talk about anything else? You know how many houses I could have built? I could have had the problem solved. Se acabó, hecho todo, completed, furnished and everything. But that's not the way it goes. I understand that. And I'm not anti-thing. Anybody can stay here. Everybody's welcome. I do not vote for stadiums. I don't care who you are. But that's how I am. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Obviously, Councilman Carlson will not be moving this. Councilman Maniscalco, you're the vice chair. Do you feel comfortable doing that, sir?
Fine, I'll move item 56.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Maniscalco, I believe a second at first by Councilman Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, we're almost finished
Thank you.
here up until 12:30. Let me, Mr. Shelby indicated to me that some staff was waiting for items 93, 94, and
No,
95.
No, I believe they already spoke to it, but they are big-ticket items, and normally the administration historically has asked that council move those so they have certainty that they have been taken care of before the
Okay,
break.
may I have motions to that
Move,
effect?
93, 94, 95.
Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion by Councilman, yes, sir.
Right, on 90, I think it was 94, I inquired of solid waste about the minority vending goal, and Mr. Wilbanks responded. He looked up in the file, responded, and I'm pleased to report they have a goal of WMBE, a goal of 30%. Yeah. And he said that this particular vendor is very good about that sort of thing, and I'm sure that we will hold them to that goal. And
You read that, right?
huh?
You saw that, that's what you said.
He told me verbally, Mark Wilbanks, and I trust him, and so we'll hold him to that goal and get a report as the project proceeds.
Okay.
I thought that was great news, and I'll be glad to support those 3 items.
Thank you for that update, Councilman Dingfelder. Okay, with motion on the table, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, and before we break, may I have items 85 and 86 addressed for setting for
So moved to set for December 19th, 2019 at 10:30 in the morning.
We have a motion by Councilman Miranda, second by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor? Any opposed? And then for
86 is January 9th, the year 2020 at 10:30 in the morning.
motion by Councilman Miranda, second by Councilman Maniscalco. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and when shall we return? Is 1:20 okay? 1:30?
1:30.
Okay.
Make a motion for 1:30.
Okay, so moved. All in favor? Yay. Let's do it. Okay, council is in recess. Second.